You're listening to Well, I Laughed, Part 2 of Bump in the Night, Conjuring the Truth.
I can open it.
Yeah, you can open it.
Okay, well, hi, everybody.
Hello, welcome.
We are going to open up a package here at the top of the show.
Yes.
This is from our good friend, we're saying names, right? Our good friend, topic of one of our episodes.
Yeah.
In like a segment we could call Crazy How Small This Little World of Ours Is.
My heart started like palpitating when I saw who it was from.
So shout out to our friend and star of our episode Winner and Losers, Reality Winner. Thank you for sending us something. Also, I don't know if this is what they are using at the post office now or if this was a personal choice, but I love the packaging.
It's cute. It's adorable.
It's gorgeous. I don't know if we're going to be able to see it. We probably shouldn't show address.
Yeah. Don't worry. We'll block it out. Casey's editing this. Casey, hear that?
Hey, at least I'm catching it so we can get the audio note on air.
Yeah, that's actually really good.
What is...
Shut up.
Wait, hold on.
Shut up.
I'm going to give this to you. I think you are going to know more about it than I am. What is it?
It's a true crime story. Obviously. Oh, it's from the Soviet Union, too. They came from the Soviet Union to start a new life together. Dr. Yakov Gluzman, a cancer researcher, and his wife, Rita, found success and wealth in their adopted country. But on Easter Sunday one morning, in a New Jersey parking lot, a local policeman discovered how badly the American dream had turned out for the millionaire Russian couple.
Whoa. Is there a note inside the book? There's not a note inside the packaging.
Nope, I think
Okay.
she knows that we just contact her.
Well, also, I think there might be then like an email or like an Instagram message
that we haven't opened.
Well, or I did, and I said can't wait, but like we sometimes
then you just forgot.
Well, we get just a lot of messages.
This is Grant telling you guys he doesn't care about you. Just kidding. Just kidding.
If that's how you want to feel, that's fine. It would be emotional manipulation for me to say anything
Exactly.
else. I actually said that to a student today. They were like, yeah, at the start of the year, you came in and like, I don't know, I didn't have like a great relationship with the last teacher. So like, yeah, for our first assignment, like I wrote something sassy, like thinking you'd like notice I was off and like come talk to me. And you didn't.
Yeah.
And my response was, well, I mean, you know, you disagreed with some of the decisions I had made and you had every right to have the reaction that you had. And to insist that I both get my way and you be happy about it would be emotional manipulation. So just letting you work through it. And they were all like,
shit. Oops.
You're
Done
like,
hecked it.
Right. You're like, correct. I did not go chasing your guys' approval. And I didn't finish the last part, which is then, of course, because you're children.
Because I figured everything would change for you tomorrow.
So if you don't think I care about you, well, it's your right to feel whatever you want to feel. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, thank you for the present.
Yes, oh my God, thank you. I'm going to read that like probably this weekend while I'm helping Grant judge a tournament.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to talk about books and we're going to talk about that. What do you want to talk about first?
Sure.
Okay, so let's talk about books first because you know I can yap forever about, well, kind of both. But
fully aware.
I think truly, like... Not the first sign that my life has changed, but kind of like, yeah. You can't see the shore of the land that I was on. Is that moment is I am reading again, and I finished. I've been getting them as audiobooks because it's easier to drive into work. Yeah. My drive's a little bit longer.
It's also nice to walk and listen to a book.
Or to be at the gym or just kind of whatever.
Yeah,
it's all fun and games until you're in the final 18% of a book, and now you're just sitting in your living room listening like it's the radio. And it's 1920, right? Like the Nazis have started World War II. Like is like about to be the commercial cut as I'm like listening half in the dark to my book.
Of course.
You know what I've realized? I don't want to crunch. I don't want to like snack when I'm listening to my little audiobooks. Harder for me to hear the book.
I think that might be because you need to update your headphones. I'm not gonna lie.
I love you. You're correct about how old my iPhone, my AirPods are, but B, I'm not listening to them with headphones in because I live alone. So I'm just
that's fair.
I'm full on blasting speaker.
Yeah. No, that's so fair. That's so true.
I've gotten really close to just connecting it through my Bluetooth speakers and playing it throughout the house. Too much bass sometimes. I have a fun little speaker system. So what books have you been reading recently?
I've been working through a series called The Curse of Ophelia. I'm on like book 4 or something, and the geopolitics are fascinating. What I am learning about myself is that like I haven't been able to just like sit down and binge one of these books since like I got through the first one really fast, and then the second one I like started having like other things to do, and so I couldn't read it as much. And it's a lot harder for me to stay invested in geopolitics when I can't really pay attention, like just sit down and just like fully get into it.
What do you mean? Like you need the physical book there? Is that what you mean?
No. It's just that like I kind of forget all of the intricacies, and I'm like, well, why aren't you doing that with that clan? That doesn't make any sense. And then I have to go back, and then I'm like, oh, right, because that one dude was like really suspicious, like when you met him like 3 books ago. Right, cool. But then there was like a little novella in between, book 3 and 4, 2 and 3 or some shit. And that just followed like these side characters that everyone knows is it's like been a will they won't they. They're like enemies to lovers. That's what I sent you. The little first line of this book was there was one fucking bed. Incorrect. I blew through that book though.
Yeah, incredible sometimes the messages I get during my working hours day job from our larger group text community.
I'm not going to say anything about that. I'm worried about who listens. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, correct.
We just live very different lives.
It's so funny to hear you say I'm all about the geopolitics because I finished one book last week. We're going to talk about it. I'm not like keeping it a secret. I'm like saving it to talk about it all at once here in a second. But the book that I then started next, the book that I'm on now, is The Guns of August by Barbara Tuchman, which is basically just the opening couple months of World War I. But she does such a good job. I mean, it's like a hallmark, landmark piece of work in terms of like World War I academic literature.
Oh, that's nice.
But like that sounds very dry, and even the way I said it, like, oh my God, like you know, there's so much sass because so much of the diplomatic corps of all these European countries are actual royalty.
Right.
It's like Prince Rhaegar or whatever, who is also for some reason the like foreign minister to Great Britain
and cast as Tom Holland.
Correct, but also then like related to like cousin Nikki of Russia or whatever, and so there's like this like really.
I've thought about just covering royalty.
Yeah.
Because there's a full story there.
Listen,
multiple.
This book is an audiobook is almost 20 hours, and I was like, honestly, I could just I've even thought about doing a condensed version of it and just calling the theme Dinner of Rivals, and then just getting into
beautiful.
Right, thank you. But if I'm actually having a hard time figuring out what the string would be through it all, and I'm not doing 20 hours.
No,
but
that's fair.
I'm listening to this, and obviously geopolitics is everything at the start of World War I.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm like in my car driving to work in the morning, and I'm like, idiot, why aren't you calling the ambassador to Brussels right now? You have no idea the kind of timeline he's under, right? Like, I'm so in it. And the way Barbara Tuchman wrote this book is you feel like the events are actively unfolding in front of you, even though you know they're not. They're over 100 years old. You just feel so, and like it's very lively for a time period of history that I don't think people view as like lively or like quick or rapid or sassy or things like that. And she does a great job too with her writing, and then a different person reads it. But like in the writing and the delivery of like when something is coded but is actually super sassy, like it's shown to you, the modern reader, like how sassy it is without manipulating the original words. It's just a fantastic book, but it's all geopolitics.
I do love that. I need more of that. But now I'm like, I have all these books that I want to read now that I'm getting recommended on Book Talk. If you're on Book Talk with me with SJM and all of that, there's like a book that just came out that got really popular that I now have on my Kindle, but I haven't gotten a chance to read it because I still have like 2 more books of this Ophelia series that I need to get through. I'm determined to finish it. But it's a pen name, and it's known that it's a pen name, and people are speculating that it's SJM, and like other authors are now getting like upset. They're like, how dare you like try and figure out who this author is? You're like discrediting, like, or not discrediting, but like breaking the trust between author and reader.
Right.
By trying to do
They're
that.
a pen name for a reason.
Yeah, and just like, but what if? Because the 5-year,
it's George R.R. Martin. Sorry. Had to do it.
No, it was like the 5-year anniversary or some anniversary of the original ACOTAR book being released, and so people were all like, "Oh my God, we all have to like be ready because she's going to announce something." And no, of course, she didn't announce anything.
Right.
Of course, as soon as I saw like a billion messages about it or TikToks about it, I was like, "No, she's not going to do anything."
Favorite tweet of all time. I'm officially off Twitter, but favorite tweet of all time was, God, I really hope Taylor Swift knows she's releasing an album tomorrow. So all like the clues and stuff.
Exactly. Exactly.
So one of our students who qualified for nationals is working on this. It's like supplemental speech. It's this weird little thing about nationals. It's cool, whatever. What you need to know is I have a kid right now writing a fresh 5-minute speech that's called expository, which is just basically informative, but you can like kind of have a point sometimes, right? So it's like persuasive and informative. It's a weird child. I don't know which one you've heard. This one is on dystopian genres.
Nope.
Okay. So we've been working with this kid's, like how they're hooking the audience, like the very start of their speech. And we hadn't been really happy with the last couple of versions. And then we finally landed on one that I think is really great. And they go, whenever I need a distraction from things in the news, like planning an airstrike in a group chat or potentially suspending habeas corpus, I turn to books. Ironically, dystopian literature. But don't act like you don't do it too. Like a horror movie at night, and then blankety, blankety, blank. And the whole book is about the dystopian genre, which is, so I think, cool. It's really interesting. And I think this whole angle...
a comeback too, I feel like.
Yes, it is. It absolutely... That's the book I want to talk about. It absolutely is. And I love it. And then this kid's speech outlines, in I think, a really cool way, because it accomplishes... Sorry, this is now like a rhetorical perspective on the speech. It does a cool job of creating a feel of... like chronological order without it actually having any like timeline to it. So It starts off with like why dystopian genre is specifically kind of viewed as oftentimes like a YA genre, and then how that popularity has created a bunch of copycats that actually weakens the genre and weakens its ability to critique power.
You're going to need to tell me who the student is, because I'm going to need to listen to this.
Yeah, well, I'll let you know when it's ready to go. And then you will be doing practice runs with them at this tournament that we're going to.
Oh, perfect. Excellent.
And then their third and final point is how these weak genres then create one-dimensional characters where like the female archetype wakes up with like the perfect messy bun, has to pick between two love interests, disagrees with like an older white man and like saves the day at the end, and like fails to create these like complicated people, and in doing so actually like weakens perceptions of women. And so this kid ends their speech with, at this point in a dystopian novel, I would have chosen one of my two love interests and finally stood up to that big meanie, but there's more we should get from dystopian novels. And I'm like,
incredible.
So now look at me.
Okay. Yeah. I kind of figured.
Yeah. It's so funny too. This is a child that will give me notes on their speech, hoping for more notes from me, which is already like a cool layer to have. But they looked at me and they go, and I know I wrote it, I just don't know if I see my voice in it. And the tough thing is, when this kid said that to me, I was like, God damn it, that's a ringer. Yeah, this feels so boilerplate. It doesn't feel like you at all. We need to change this. So
I love that student too, because I really got to like meet them for the first time at that event, and I don't think they'd ever really talk to me. And they had like that thing at the end, so I like ended up sitting next to them, and they just look at me and they're like, "So you're the one from the podcast?" And I went, "Yep,
perfect.
That's
no
me."
notes at all whatsoever.
And then we just kind of sat and stared forward and sitting next to each other. And I was like, this is the start of a great relationship.
I don't, listen, teachers everywhere. It's May. We're not supposed to be teaching. I actually had so few students in one of my periods, like an AP test took legitimately 20 out of 24 kids from one of my classes, that the other 4 played poker.
Hell yeah.
Which, like, it's not like I provided them the chips, but I was like, if admin walks in, the explanation is, I don't know what you wanted me to do. There's 4 of them. So this is me not being like, I'm still teaching and you should too. I mean, like, we're doing activities and stuff, but like the year's coming up.
Yeah.
One of my students came in today super frustrated and goes, ugh, my English teacher just insists on teaching still.
Oh no.
And like, granted, it's May, but it's not end of May yet. Like, it's not inappropriate.
Choir teacher I think probably when she first started, like, she tried to do things in May, but no. Like, our last concert was called Pops, and like literally after Pops, you showed up one day to turn in your music, and then she was like, I don't want to see you in this room until fall.
My hot controversial take here, maybe I shouldn't be saying this on air with, prospective job listening as well. You're a choir teacher, my subject area, we are electives. And so our students oftentimes like pour themselves into our subjects during the school year. But then once like the big event or the big like kind of moment happens, these kids are oftentimes very like aspirational or motivated or like goal oriented and like have legitimately other things that are now on their front burner, like AP tests. And so like, yeah, we're going to do a daily activity. If I have the majority of you, we're going to read like an article and have a conversation about like different perspectives and stuff. But like, yeah, like focus those energies now on
and being
these
able
other
to take
things.
something off of their plate can be like
right.
huge.
I am happy with what we have learned this year. That's
it.
great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about dystopian genre for a second.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
I have just finished reading Sunrise on the Reaping, the latest Susan Collins Hunger book.
I need to get
Hunger
into
Games
that.
book.
Yeah.
It's
incredible.
So good.
Yeah.
It's so.
Jordan Fisher posted a TikTok of himself reading it and like kind of crying with the like with just like the words on it being like, Suzanne Collins just knows what to tell us.
Yes.
Like she has a message.
I've only had one audiobook where I legitimately could not stand the voice reader. I've had several audiobooks where I'm neutral towards the reader.
Yeah.
He does a phenomenal.
Does he really?
He's the one that reads it, right?
I don't think so.
Ooh, maybe
Jordan Fisher is my Broadway.
I think it's Jefferson Wright, which is
oh,
it's a J name.
That's good though. I love his voice.
You're gonna really love this.
My Morgan Freeman.
Yeah. Listen, this isn't a spoiler. It's something that happened actually in the third. Actually, happens in the second book of the 5 that she published.
Oh, okay.
You just don't realize the magnificence of this writing, and I'm not going to like pull back that curtain, but for my girlies out there who have read Sunrise on the Reaping, I just want to remind you in that second book, District 12 has their tributes picked last, right? Girls go first, so Katniss gets picked because hers is the only name of the book. And then the other bowl has just 2 names, and Haymitch. And so that means Haymitch is the last person to be reaped during the reapings.
I have chills.
So go ahead and just carry that with you.
I have chills. Because this one is Haymitch's.
It's Haymitch's games. Yeah.
Right.
It's good, and like every time you read these books, there's a part of me, and maybe this is like the teacher pearl clutcher in me. I'm like, am I reading this book because of like a graphic depiction of like gladiatorial violence, and that like scratches like caveman part of my brain, and like that's what I love.
Yeah.
But like, no, then you're reading the book and the games are happening and you're like legitimately devastated when these characters meet fates you knew they were going to meet, right? Like this is again another prequel. So you go into the book knowing that, sorry if this is a spoiler, but you go in knowing that the character you meet in the other movies is going to win.
Because he's alive.
Right, which means all the other characters you meet aren't going to win.
Yeah.
And there's 48 of them. Because it's a quarter quell, which is another thing covered in the original trilogy. Do not come for me. Yeah. I'm like, I thought about this on the way here. I'm like, what can and can't I say? And so you just meet these characters as you do in every book, and you are just devastated by like the like blind brutality of the state. And I saw this great TikTok, and it was like, what, you think you can just commit a mass murder just because you've been doing mass murder for the last 50 years? Yeah. Correct. So combination of like in the news and just kind of, at least in my world, Hunger Games content really picking up. I'm feeling really good about that kid's speech.
I had so many thoughts that I proceeded to immediately forget.
About Sunrise on the Reaping?
Books.
I will say this. If you have, I know you have this series to finish.
Oh, sorry.
If you're not on video, just go ahead and come to this moment. I think we're either 8 to 45 minutes in, somewhere around that range. Just look for Maya's face. Go ahead, babe.
I had a comment. Okay, I remember both of my comments. Wow, it's a great day for me. I am so good at what I do. The first one being dystopian societies, right? Someone made the point that, have you heard of the new movie that's coming out called Sinners?
Yes. It's like, that's also like every person whose cultural opinion I care about loves Sinners.
Sinners, yeah, I need to watch it. It has vampires in it.
Right.
And someone was like, vampires are the prequel to Recession.
Yes, it's a recession indicator.
Because Twilight came out right before, like, what was it, like 2008?
Yes.
And then there's like like Dracula and like all of the original ones came out
right before Recessions. Yes.
Fucking incredible.
Vampire
and someone
core.
was like, and people really like that because vampires who live eternally just know that they're going to make it past whatever comes next. And I was like, that's profound.
Also,
profound.
probably just a coincidence.
Oh,
but
yeah,
I love
100%.
it still.
Yeah. The other thing I watched, I went and watched the new Marvel movie called Thunderbolts.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting to be pretty meh about it just because action movies in general haven't done it for me. And like since the last Avengers wrapped up, right? And so, or like the last phase of Marvel wrapped up with the Avengers, like, when he snapped and made everyone go away and blah, 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 blah.
I think it was called Endgame.
Was that the last one, or there might have been another one after that?
You're yelling. I don't know.
This one got me. This one really got, because it wasn't as like action-y as I was expecting. Like I was expecting like a big battle at the end, but it was like, I don't want to like spoil anything for anyone who's gonna go watch it, but like the villain, it's like it's you, like it's your mental health,
right?
And it just like I was like, oh. Like
I didn't know I was in another Everything Everywhere All at Once situation.
Goddamn. And like, if you're going to watch it, skip forward like, I don't know, like 2 minutes, because Grant's never going to watch it. You're never going to watch it. Do you want to watch it? Okay, cool.
I mean, like, if we're all hanging out and it's on, I'm not going to be like, no.
It's
like,
Florence Pugh,
whatever.
which is really why I went.
But I'm not gonna watch
oh my God, I love her.
The movies are like $30 now. I'm not going to go to it.
Yeah, Casey bought my ticket.
Good. Neverage.
Yeah. And so if you're gonna watch it, skip forward now. Okay, I'm not gonna be responsible for spoiling the movie for you. The new villain that's introduced, I can't even fucking remember his name. It's Century. Also, Julie Louis-Dreyfus.
Julie Louis-Dreyfus.
Dreyfus. Yeah. Okay, I can never remember how to pronounce her last name. She is in it, and like arguably she is the villain, but like she's not. You know. Fascinating. But it's like comical. She's so funny, and she does an amazing job. But the villain is Century, and it's literally this guy that's just like so depressed. And they end up recruiting him to their side. Like he was on their side, and then he like gets a bunch of power. But then he's so depressed that he gets like a bipolar disorder kind of thing. And he's like been experimented on. He's like Captain America kind of, but he's been experimented on to the point where when he gets depressed and has that bipolar and goes into like the like deep depression phase, his whole like hero persona changes and he can just wipe out entire worlds. But he can't access those powers like when he's in a happy state, because that like will trigger him to go into this like really negative state. So now we have like arguably one of the most powerful superheroes that we've seen yet in the Marvel universe, but they can't really use him because he might get a little too depressy.
Okay, fascinating.
Fucking incredible.
It's like a weird, like Neo Hulk situation.
Kind of. Okay. Yeah, he's the final like person that you would send out into battle when things are looking real bad is what you would do. And at the end, they're all kind of the Avengers, right? And he's kind of sitting off in the corner and he's back to his like normal persona, but he can't use any of his powers or anything, right? And someone like looked over at him or something and he was like, I can't help you with that, obviously, but like I did the dishes today. And I was like, oh, that's me.
Extra funny that you failed to remember this for a second.
You know what? I didn't see the irony.
You thought about it, lost it, and then found it again. Was that both things?
Yeah, that was both things.
The amount of self-control it took not to like make a funny jab as you were doing your victory parade for remembering, because I knew if I said anything, you would lose it again.
I would lose it
So
again.
You kept saying things to try to set me up, and I was like, say your words, Maya. Get it out, woman. Say it. I'm trying to be nice. Trying to support you.
I so appreciate you.
Cool. Now I need you to do something for me.
Yes.
The Hunger Games movie is going to come out, I think, like in a year. I think it comes out in like 2026. I need you to have read the book by then, obviously.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
Cool.
For sure. I've already bought it. Like it's on my shelf.
I want to shout out to my near dear friend and fellow listener, Riley, back in Nebraska. Her and I live together in California. She's wonderful. Me and her have been texting all day today about the Hunger Games and Hunger Game theories. And I mean, I keep Riley in my life for many reasons. Access to an English major, one of them.
No, that's super fair. That's so real, actually.
And then I think last big thing for us to talk about in the opening
We have
chat.
one correction to make.
Right.
Remember,
okay.
but we can do that whenever.
Are you excited? So Maya is coming with us on her second out-of-state trip.
Yeah, this one on a
requires
plane.
a plane, though.
Yeah. I feel like there's big milestones in your life, right? the first time you fly, the first time you fly alone, and now the first time I'm flying on the other end of that spectrum. And to say I'm anxious, actually, no, I feel fine about it. But it feels like a lot.
It's end of season, so we're bringing just like a crack team.
Which I did think about today because I was like, that'll feel a lot easier than Cheyenne.
When we had 60 and I had to be like, hey, watch that entire flock over there.
I was like,
they could bolt at any second. Good luck.
And then you walked away, and then I panicked and looked for Lydia, who was also gone.
And all the kids are just stressing you like cows in a barn.
Yeah. There's like 3 of them that were willing to talk to me, and the rest of them I was like trying to keep an eye on from the corner.
No, it'll be wonderful, and it like continues to feed into my like thing I tell all new coaches, which is I'm like, just get your best friend to come do it. You can teach them to do speech. You can't teach a speech person how to be your best friend. Like you can't reverse engineer it. Okay, It only goes one way. Sorry, I was about to say it out loud. I'm a Monster Bella like vampire reference, but it felt a little complicated to get it all set up.
Yeah.
Also, on Thursday evening, there is a little coach reception.
Hell yeah, I did see that on the schedule.
Okay, cool.
I was wondering what that was about.
Hors d'oeuvres. It's about hors d'oeuvres and sitting at a table and socializing.
Okay. I'm not as thrilled about the socializing, but I will go for the hors d'oeuvres.
So glad to hear you say that because, as non-head coaches, no one's going to talk to you.
Oh, hell yeah.
You and Maya can sit there. Sorry, you're Maya. You and Lydia can just sit there and snackety
Lydia
snack.
really likes talking, though.
Sure, but remember that story she shares about how one of my colleagues just fails to remember he's ever met her before?
Yeah!
I'm
interested to meet them.
We're going back to that tournament.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, I'm interested. I'm sat.
I'm very excited to have people at Night Talk with us, to have my good friends. I do enjoy minor celebrity status there. No, I'm kidding. Kidding. You're not going to see me. You should know that. As a board member, you're
fully
just
aware. I've been to tournaments
snacks
that you have
in the
helped
hotel
run.
room in the evening will be when you see me.
Yeah.
But you should be fed really well.
I know. I'm excited about that.
You've seen the menu, right?
I briefly looked at the schedule today because I was panicked about asking you if I could take time off for the webinar that I have to do for my job.
Crazy that you were nervous about that.
Well, I didn't know if that in my head, I was like, it's Friday, so it's the end of the week, so that might be the end of the tournament. And then I looked at the schedule. I was like, no, I'm a fucking idiot. The tournament goes all weekend. So I was looking to see
opening hours.
Yeah, exactly. So it was fine. I was also sitting across the little desk today on site from my boss, who is notoriously bad about approving/denying PTO requests.
Good.
And so I had told him that I was going to Nine Talk a few weeks ago just to make sure that it was all good. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And so I put in the PTO request. I saw that he hadn't approved it. And so I messaged him again last week and I was like, hey, so you didn't approve it. Totally fine. Like I don't care if you didn't approve it, or I just want to remind you that I'm going to be out.
Right.
Because you've already said that it's okay.
Right.
And
you already said it could go. I asked Mom.
he was sitting across from me and I started getting a bunch of Workday notifications. I was like, approved. And I was like, you doing some stuff over there? And he was like, yeah. And then he looked down and he was like, yes, Tyler, you can take January 20th off. And I was like, oh my God, he's that far ahead? And he was like, no, that's how bad I am at this. And I was like, you see me.
I think there's a big part of all of us that really quietly reflects that.
Oh, my boss is just his name is Dave. It's just such a stereotypical white man. Dave is all of us. He's incredible.
I think there's actually such a culture of that, in all American workplaces, that I don't do it at my current school because I work at a district school now and I really respect it. But when I worked at a charter school and I didn't respect a lot of the people that were in charge, I had this policy. I don't work there anymore, so I feel like I can say this.
Yeah.
Never sign an NDA.
Or always sign an NDA.
If anyone from our central office emailed me with any request, I just marked the email as read. And I would only read it if they emailed me again. And then I was like, oh, we're following up with this. Well, I can at least start to do it now. But then you also fall into the trap of, totally, absolutely, I'm actually almost done. I'll send it to you tonight. And then you try to open it and you have to request access to the
show
document.
That you've just never seen it.
Correct. And now I have to go find a cardboard box to put all my stuff in. They're going to fire me. This has been good. Listen, as someone who's only been awake for about 40 minutes.
It's true.
Very chatty opening session.
We do have one correction. Do you want to read it or do you want me to read it?
it?
Okay. We actually got this over our website. Shout out to our website for doing the deed. This is from our friend, Allison. She says, I'm just going to read the whole message. Just a quick note on episode 104, which was Hit, Pray, Stay, I believe. Grant's guess at how many people of Japanese descent were incarcerated in the camps is way off. He said around 30K, but the number is around 120, with 80K being second-generation folks who were born here. My grandmother was sent from LA to Hart Mountain near Cody, Wyoming, to live in bitterly cold plywood barracks. My grandfather was sent from Central Valley, California to Gila River, Arizona. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, to live in the desert. He left the camps to serve in the U.S. military intelligence, where he was sent to Japan and was allowed to visit distant family he had never met while on leave just after the war ended, I believe. He volunteered for the military intelligence since they needed Japanese speakers, and it avoided the draft. Many men were drafted out of the camps and sent to the 442nd Battalion, an all-Japanese force that was also called the Purple Heart Battalion for the amount of injuries and deaths. Whew. My great-uncle was part of that battalion and won the equivalent of the Medal of Honor in France for his part in rescuing the Lost Battalion, where they had over 800 casualties, rescuing about 200 men. In Denver, there's an immersive theater group that has explored the intergenerational trauma felt by the descendants of those incarcerated in the camps. I forced my mom to come out to the show, and it's changed both our lives for the better. And then she sent a link to that show. And then a note that my uncle on the other side of the family got into the Navy to avoid being sent to the front lines during the Vietnam War. Love the pod. Keep it up, Allison.
Amazing. Thank you, Allison. Yeah. Definitely knew I was taking just like a stab at the statistic at the time, and appreciate the update, especially when it's something like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Super fair. All right. So we're starting this episode, right? I, truthfully, dear listener, have honest to God no idea how this episode's gonna go.
Something we've heard before.
Yeah, but this one's like really real. Like I might be skipping parts of my notes. I might be like skipping around in my notes. I might just fully cut out sections. I might add random ass shit that I remember from watching documentaries. This is one of the first times that I have listened to podcasts and watched documentaries, both for this episode, and not taken notes while watching them, because I've just been like kind of like doing or writing other notes or whatever, and so it's all just kind of in my brain. And so we're playing a Grant. We're just gonna, as I'm learning now, the more that I have to read his notes to edit, a lot of that stuff is not in his notes, y'all.
Sometimes I do just pick a topic where I'm like, well, I actually have a degree in teaching this. I can just kind of go for a little bit.
No, it's true. The Watergate episode, I was editing, trying to find the chapter markers, and I was like, okay, he hasn't said that yet. And then like 20 minutes later, I was like, oh no, we're way past this, and I had to like go back and like, okay, where did he start talking about this topic? So yeah, Bump in the Night. God, how do I want to start this?
I hope it starts off with a salad recipe like mine did.
It's not. It's not gonna. Okay, we can start with this quote. This person who we're going to talk about, who is the subject of this episode, was asked if he feared death.
Okay.
And he said, quote, "No, I don't fear it. Not one iota. I know I'll be going to a beautiful place, a place so spectacular it defies words. As Jackie Gleason once said when asked the same question, why should I fear it? I'm going to die anyway."
Are we doing Charles Manson?
No.
Is Jackie Gleason supposed to be a big hand?
No.
Okay, I was like,
Jackie Gleason, I actually considered cutting out that whole line.
Oh,
so.
okay. I was like, is there like, do half our listeners now immediately know who we're
irrelevant.
doing? Okay.
And we're also going to do a bit of a head fake at the beginning, and it's going to be real sad for a second.
Oop, okay.
We're going back to December 1987.
Okay.
In Long Island.
Fun.
New York. A family called the Lutz family has just purchased a home for the very low price of $80,000.
Okay.
Which today is $225,000. Still very cheap.
Yeah.
And one source said the house was sold for a song.
Ooh, okay.
Whew.
Is that song sung by Ghost? Why is it so cheap?
It is, at least today when I looked up this house, I believe it's about the same size. It's 3,600 square feet, 5 bed, 4 bath. It's a pretty large house. And so to get it for this price was shocking.
Right.
To say the least.
Terrible for the rest of the block's property values.
Yeah. So this is the mother and father of this family. They also have children, are George and Kathy Lutz. And Kathy had 3 children from a previous marriage, I believe. Maybe it was 4 children. I think it was 3 children. And so she brought all of her children. So George is the stepfather. And they're all moving into this new house before Christmas. And they kind of had an idea, probably more than just an idea, of why this house was sold for so cheap.
So cheap, okay.
And so they asked a Catholic priest to come and bless the house before moving in.
And that priest is now the Pope? Got to get the jokes in where we can.
There's a Pope mentioned, but not this one. Father Ralph J. Pecorano came to visit and bless the house. There's one source that said he walked into the house and was walking around, and then he walks up to the playroom and then just like leaves. He says, absolutely not.
Oh, okay.
Another source says he does come in and blesses the house and then leaves and then walks back to like his office. I don't remember what the name of his office is called. There's like a name for Catholic priest's office, but there was like thousands of flies just like in his office. And then he like almost died from
Rectory?
some illness. Rectory.
Sorry.
Yeah, there it is.
My brain wasn't going to let it go.
I remembered it started with an R, but I wasn't about to try and guess. Rectory sounds correct.
I legitimately was like, the server of my brain is going to start humming soon if I don't solve this.
No, okay, yeah. So on Christmas Eve, so just a short while after they had moved in, Father Ralph calls the family to tell them that he had actually heard a voice while he was in the house, and that voice told him to get out. Ooh. And so he just advised that the family stay out of the second floor bedroom. Unfortunately,
just the second floor bedroom?
Because that's where he heard the voice. That's where all the bad vibes were, and he left in the other version of the story. Ironically, though, this room is where George and Kathy slept. Like, that's their bedroom. That's the bedroom. And I couldn't find a source that said they moved rooms.
Okay.
So do with that what you will. So they move in shortly before Christmas. On January 14th, so the next year, 28 days later, the Lutz family would flee in the middle of the night, leaving most of their belongings and never to return.
To the house?
To the house. Yeah, I'm just going to read some of this is one of the things where I was listening to a podcast and then I was like, I'm not going to be able to remember all of these random ass things that happened. So I'm going to just read some of the things that happened. Obviously, I'm talking about a haunting. So if this is going to be upsetting for you, I'm not going to go like super in depth. I'm just going to say this at the top of the hour. I'm not saying that I don't believe in the paranormal. What I am saying is I've listened to so many paranormal stories that they all kind of blend together and kind of, I'm like, okay. And
I'm kind of a skeptic when it comes to paranormal.
Believe me. Believe me, I know.
Okay.
But regardless... Grant, look me in the face.
The fact that we're not the same is what makes great content.
I know. Look me in the face.
Here it is, babes.
Yeah.
Got my beard trimmed.
We're going to play devil's advocate.
Because he doesn't have any advocate.
Yeah, so he needs an advocate right now, okay? Okay, we're just going to...
Is that advocate in the second floor bedroom of the Lutz's house? Okay, good. Continue.
Okay, so after the Lutz family moves in, for one thing, the dog was always trying to escape.
Okay.
Some would say that the dog was like almost escaping to the point of putting itself in danger, like intentionally, because it was like, fuck no, I'm not staying here.
Like, I will hurt myself if I have to, but
yes,
to get out of this
get
house.
Out of here.
Okay.
So it was like constantly they were trying to like keep the dog in. The garage door would open and close of its own accord. This was in the 70s, by the way, so that's most likely a manual garage.
Sure.
It would take the entire family out there to like keep it closed. Sometimes
like holding it down?
Yeah, because the whole family would just watch it like open, shut, open, shut. There are rocking chairs that would like rock on their own.
You don't need to have a rocking chair in a home if you think that it's haunted.
Yeah, that's so real. That's so real.
They also have a collection of Victorian dolls scattered throughout the house. Like, you don't need these things.
No. How much do you, because I know you're a skeptic.
Yeah.
How much do you know about like the telltale signs of a haunted house or a haunted area.
I mean, rocking chairs, rocking
seems
on
like
their
a
own.
pretty big one. Yeah.
I know the Babadook is a gay icon. You've heard that, right?
No.
Oh. Netflix once accidentally classified the Babadook as an LGBT video, and so that it popped up on LGBT videos that you might be interested in for like Netflix users.
No.
And Babadook was welcomed into the community, and so now you'll go to some pride parades and people are dressed as the Babadook.
That's beautiful.
I know. It's why like I can't actually get offline. Like so much culture is happening there.
So much culture.
So that's probably it for as far as I know when it comes to the signs.
Okay. Before I continue, the like telltale signs of like a haunted place are like bad vibes all around. If you ever walked in somewhere and feel like you're being watched, like that's like
those of us who are single know exactly what this experience is like.
I mean, true.
Oh my God, where is all your furniture at?
It's all really based on vibes. That's the first big no-no. Spirits or paranormal entities have a tendency to be able to affect like lighting or electronics. So like ghost hunters will go into ghost or like haunted houses and their equipment will die, and then they'll leave the house, and without charging it or anything, the equipment will suddenly start working again. Lights flickering. Another big one is like cold spots or hot spots, just like temperature changes that don't make sense for the house. Like if I were sitting here and I'm freezing and then I walk over there and it's like boiling hot, like that's a sign that something's wrong. And then you can get more malevolent with it, like more.
Sorry, because so far all you've just listed is common issues with old homes. They're drafty and their electricity isn't modern.
I'm not going to comment on anything Grant says because I know we have girlies, gays, theys, he's, she's, whatever, that believe in the paranormal. And more power to you. I'm not here to yuck your yum.
You're one of those people, aren't you?
I'm a mouse on an airplane, babes. A mouse on an airplane.
You're welcome.
I want you to know I think about that all the time. I'm a mouse on an airplane. It's actually given me so much peace in my heart of just being like, no, it's actually so fine that I don't know the answer to that. Except for the deep sea.
Okay, imagine like a stadium filled with ocean.
That's my worst nightmare.
The other day I said just something. I forget what the like stimuli was, but I was like, God, I'm about to find God or invent one.
That's good.
Mouse on an airplane.
Mouse on an airplane.
Okay, continue.
I've had creepy experiences where I'm like, could have been a ghost. Could have been a
Do
nursery.
we need to explain mouse on an airplane to them, by the way?
Oh, yeah, probably. That was a really...
One of the notes was that, like, hey, sometimes your guys' deep cut references.
Yeah.
We forget that this isn't just like a besties story hour.
This was from the episode I did. It was episode...
Alone in a Crowded Room.
Yeah. It was episode 42, I want to say. 41. It was after Devil in the Details. So it's Alone in a Crowded Room. I covered the Fermi paradox, which is basically the science behind whether or not aliens are around. And I was asking Grant how he feels about aliens. And
my analogy was that like, you can be like a really smart mouse and like completely understand that like water bottle filled with water and I can spin on wheel and not go anywhere and like completely be master of your domain. And if we put you on an airplane, you just would never have any ability to comprehend how that works.
Or how you get to where you're going.
Right, or that you're moving through space in any way that's meaningful to objects bigger or like more intelligent than you. And I just really do feel like I'm a mouse on an airplane. Like I think we are reaching the limits of like our own understanding of like the plane that we exist, but that, I mean, we could all be mice on an airplane, you know?
It's so true. Yeah, exactly. So mouse on an airplane, that's where I'm at when it comes to the paranormal. I think the stories freak me out, but I also think I've desensitized myself just by like... This is what I was talking about, that I've listened to so many paranormal stories where I'm like, great, they walk into this house that they know is haunted and someone gets a scratch magically on their back. Oh no. Yeah. Which like
make a hilarious horror comedy.
Yeah.
Starring character actress Margot Martindale.
And I would be the first to die. Like 100%.
I mean, you're a woman of color, so
yeah. I would be telling everyone to leave and they would mourn me because I told them to avoid this.
Correct.
Okay, so
my hot girlfriend survives, so don't worry.
Yeah.
Continue.
One thing that I do find interesting about like the paranormal beliefs and stuff, there's just so many different like facets of it in terms of like how people will believe ghosts move around. So there's something that I found really interesting. I think M covered it, and that's why and that's why we drink. It's called the blueprint theory. So that ghosts or spirits or whatever will move around the house that they're like stuck in or whatever space that they were in, but they'll move through it as if the space was still structured as if they were like from when they lived there.
Okay.
So like if there was a ghost that died, like say in this house, and this wall didn't used to be here, they would be able to walk through that wall because that wall wasn't there when they were alive. And so they're seeing I don't know, like how they existed.
They're like frozen in that time.
Yeah, and so there's like different levels of spirits depending on like who you ask, which I thought that was fascinating because I never like thought about the differences between like sentient and non-sentient spirits. I don't know. The other funny thing I think about with paranormal, and this is also like not an original thought, this is definitely from And That's Why We Drink, is that there's always a woman in white or a woman in black or a woman in red.
Okay.
Or
so there's a woman wearing color.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Or not, you know, which I just think is really funny. Anyway, so those are some of the telltale signs of like a haunted house. There's probably more that I'm missing, just, you know. So here's other things that happened to the Lutz family. The one that I believe the least is they said they had green ectoplasm like coming from crevices in this house. I don't understand that. I've never quite understood.
Did they have pictures of it?
No, of course not. Why would they? To be fair, this was also the 70s, but okay. The dog would try and escape. The garage door would open. There were cold spots in this house. Like notably, the father George was like always freezing, despite like sitting in front of the fireplace. You know. Notably, the men in the family, so George and then the two sons, were getting noticeably more aggressive the longer they stayed in the house. Meanwhile, the mother and daughter felt a sense of like peace for a while. Like they didn't think anything was wrong, really.
Natural gas leak.
There was a crucifix that they had that kept turning upside down. Like they would be able to watch it turn upside down. And there was like a putrid smell coming from it that they noticed.
Dead animal on the wall.
All right.
I'll stop.
They would like look at each other during certain points, or someone would like turn around and they would first see that person with like red eyes, and then they would like blink and it would be gone, and like that's freaky. It said that it got worse after they took down their Christmas lights, which like same. Now it's just dark.
It's just winter.
Yeah. The dad, George, around 3:00 in the morning, and remember that 3:00 in the morning, would wake up frequently and just find himself in random parts of the house.
Oh.
Yeah, like one time he found himself outside. One time he found himself in the in the basement. He would find him like that would be so disorienting. And
Men are famously the majority of sleepwalkers.
The number of times I've sleptwalked, I've never. Have you ever like come out of sleepwalking while you're?
I've never sleptwalked before. My brother has.
That makes sense. You die when you sleep.
Yeah, my body is fighting to keep me alive. It can't also operate a moving vehicle. It can't operate a motor vehicle on medication like that.
I've known that I've sleptwalked twice in my life. Once because my mom, like, I went downstairs and my parents were still up watching TV, and I just like walked downstairs and my parents were like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, go back upstairs. The other time, apparently, sleepwalking happens more often if you go to bed drunk.
Okay.
So one time in my college house, and this is still so embarrassing for me, I walked out of my room, across the hall, into my roommate's room, and was like crawling around the floor looking for Mo. I kept like saying like, Momo, like, oh, come here. And it woke my roommates up, and it was like two of my roommates were engaged, and so they were sleeping in the same bed, and one of them had to like get me up and like lead me back into my room because they both realized that my Momo was in my room, like she was never gone. They started locking their doors after that.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
I was like, I can't even be mad. That's ridiculous.
Younger brother Griffin has stopped walk a couple times, and while of course there are stories I could share about that, the only one I will share to a national audience is the first time he stopped walk was actually on a family vacation here to Colorado. We were up in Boulder, and I remember waking up and he was out of bed and he was talking like he couldn't find something that was like very much just there on the bed. But like I was like, what? Because he's my brother and we were on a family vacation and we're both in middle school. Yeah, I'm like just being mean to him.
Yeah.
And now my older sister is like, Grant, he's sleepwalking. Like just help him get back to bed. I was like, I'm not touching that freak. We were sharing a bed that night.
What I'm saying is that I've never woken up from sleepwalking while sleepwalking.
Okay.
And that feels feels more worse, you know. Okay, some other things that happened. At one point, the kids, I think, were outside and they looked up. I can't remember which one of the parents was with them, but I think one of them was. They look up and in one of the second story windows, they saw what looked like a pig with red eyes and wolf teeth looking down at them. And that is a very common depiction of a demon in folklore. Terrifying.
Okay.
And that, I think the family saw that pig a bunch of different times. Regardless,
if you believe this, how are you staying in this house for like a day? You know, like that's what I don't understand.
I mean, they paid money for it.
Sure. You'd be surprised what insurance will cover when you set it on fire.
Okay. And then at one point, the house or the windows were really hard to open. And so I think the older brother like was really struggling with it. They were all trying to get it to open and suddenly it just like it flew open. Right. And then he's kind of leaning out of the window and he puts his like hands on the windowsill and then the window slams shut like on his fingers and it like totally like demolishes his hands. Right.
Okay.
So he goes downstairs with his mom and his mom is like getting an ice pack or whatever to like help with it because an ice pack fixes everything, obviously.
Put a wet paper towel on it.
Yes.
You're welcome.
And then she's turned around like at the fridge or at the sink or whatever. And he looks up and he remembers, I think there's a documentary. I didn't watch it. I think it's on Hulu called, I'm not actually going to tell you the name because I haven't told you what the name of the case is. Some of you probably already know, but Grant doesn't. He looked up and saw what he thought was a spirit, and that spirit walked like through his hands and like sat down next to him because his hands were like out on the counter and sat down next to him. So he looks up at the spirit who's now sitting next to him, like freaking out a little bit, and then he looks back at his hands and his hands are fine.
Whoa.
Creepy as shit. The other really creepy one is that George, while exploring the house after they like had first moved in, finds a room that was not on the floor plan. And when he opens it, it's like all painted red inside.
Oh, no.
Absolutely not. And I guess, I don't know why this is like the only thing that I noted about this, but the dog would not go in.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. If I were a dog,
it's
also
like, it's in there.
no. Yeah. Not going in. Yeah. So day 28 comes around. This is the day that they will eventually flee. And I think to this day, the family has not like fully opened up about everything that happened on that day or on that night that really caused them to flee. One of them was that the boys were sharing a room and their beds started levitating with them in it and were like kind of bumping into each other. So they wake up and they start screaming for their parents. And so George wakes up and then he can't get out of bed. He feels like something's like sitting on his chest. He like can't like sit up. Then he looks to the side and Kathy is also levitating out of the bed and he like goes to grab her arm to like bring her back down and he looks at her and she looks like she's like 90 now. She's not, by the way. So they finally, I think, managed to get everyone get up. He tries to call people. Obviously the phones aren't working because it's all landlines and it's a haunting. And they like gather all the things that they need. They're getting ready to flee the house. They call the priest to try and get him to come and like bless at least them so that so that nothing follows them for wherever they're going. And the priest literally just says, according to one source, says, "Why are you still there?"
Yeah.
The priest is like, "I'm not blessing that. You need to leave,"
right, get out
which
of there.
is iconic. And then I believe they moved to San Diego.
So upper northeast to San Diego.
Yeah. They get as far away as possible. And I think this draws...
I think it'd be different if like they moved to like Detroit or like a different part of Massachusetts.
San Diego's just so funny.
San Diego is just so much like, well, we had to land somewhere.
Yeah, literally the opposite. And so I think the fact that they only lived there for like less than a month kind of drew some public attention.
Sure.
Right. And so local news starts kind of asking questions and we start learning more. And what we learn, as in Grant and I, for the scope of the story, I think other people in the area already knew that, is that this house is in Amityville.
Okay, so this is the Amityville
This is the
Horror.
Amityville Horror.
Okay.
Do you know about the true crime that happened?
At the Amityville Horror?
At the Amityville house, yeah.
I'm going to take a guess.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, because plus 30, plus 45, but maybe plus a minute for descriptions of violence.
Yes. 100% correct.
Waiting a second to give you a chance to fast forward. If I remember correctly, and you know I wouldn't have pursued any media on this. This is just what you can't avoid. A family was murdered there by one of their own? Okay.
Yes. So the DeFeo family is who lived there, and on November 13th of 1974.
So how many years before they sold the house? Before
the house was on the market for 13 months.
They moved into that house a year after a murder happened there?
They did know that the murder happened there when they moved in. Yeah. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about other things that happened that I didn't mention intentionally because it gives away the plot, but I'm going to talk about the crime for a second. Okay. Trigger warning, we are going to talk about a murder. I'm not going to get into like really graphic depictions of it or anything. We're just going to talk about what happened.
But if you're like, I know the house is haunted, I don't need to know why, I can probably skip ahead to the next chapter.
A lot of people murdered. Yeah.
Skip ahead to the next chapter.
You can skip ahead to the next chapter for sure. So this is in Amityville, Long Island. This is, November 13th, 1974. 23-year-old Ronald J. DeFeo Jr. I saw one source say that he had a nickname, which I am completely blanking on, but sources that I read also called him Ron or Ronnie.
Okay.
He murdered his parents and 4 siblings in their sleep with a .35 Marlin rifle. His siblings, remember he's 23, his siblings were Dawn, who was 18 at the time, Allison, who was 13, Mark, who was 12, and John, who was 9. And obviously his parents, who for some reason I didn't write their name, which was my mistake. That seems like an obvious error. Anyway, he played it off as if nothing happened. He, I think, went to maybe his job and was talking to coworkers about how he couldn't get in touch with his family for some reason. He asked to borrow someone's phone to try and call them because he thought maybe like they were avoiding his calls specifically. And then he's like at a bar talking about it. And then he goes home and then runs back to the bar saying, "You got to help me. I think my family has been killed." And so eventually the
Had he done the murder like that evening and then went about his day?
I can't remember the exact timeline. Again, I didn't do a ton of digging into this because this is a smaller part of the big story. But yeah, there was a significant amount of time between him committing the crime.
He doesn't leave the bar, commit the crime, and then rush back from the bar.
No. He had wrapped like his bloody clothes in a pillowcase. And one source said he took his weapon with him. One source said that he like stashed him under his bed, which is like, bro. So the cops come, investigate. Initially, they are worried for Ronnie because they think that, oh, someone's targeting this whole family and they missed you. Right. So like, we got to protect you. And so he played that off. He actually started trying to lead the cops down a different path of like, oh, my dad was actually involved in organized crime, and like named a mobster of the area. The mobster ended up having a like rock solid alibi. So he was not involved. I think Ronnie may or may not have then tried to pin it on a friend, and then eventually came clean saying, once I started, I couldn't stop, which is insane.
Bone chilling.
Yes. There's a lot of accounts about the dynamics of this family that I'm not particularly inclined to believe because, again, Ronnie's the one that gave those accounts.
Right.
So there are accounts that his father was like a military man and like really regimented and abused him and the rest of the family. And so that kind of translated down to him then having a violent tendency. There was also something with the Buick dealership. I believe his dad owned a Buick dealership that Ronnie would work at. And there was a robbery there that the father, whose name was also Ron.
Ron Sr.
Yes. Ron Sr. highly suspected Ron Jr. of being a part of that crime. And I believe Ron Jr. also had some drug and alcohol problems that he was spending money on. And so that was a potential motive. So
did they, one detail about the crime. And this is a kind of probably a more gruesome question. They find all of the victims in their bed, or was one victim found like hiding in their closet?
I can't remember. I think that they were all in their bed, but I, again, didn't do a ton of fact finding on this one. It could have been the mother if anyone was hiding in their bed. From what I remember, it was like very strange to people that I think both of the brothers were still in their bed because he had to have shot one and then shot the other.
Right.
And so here are some of the details about the haunting that I didn't share earlier. One of them that I think, so the Lutz family knew that a very tragic crime had happened there. And one of the things that they did to kind of protect themselves before agreeing to buy the house was they wanted to see anything that the police was willing to offer them about the case itself so that they could be the most prepared going into it.
Okay.
Right? Like if there's a house or like a room that was like, I don't know, like the center of all of the crime, like I think that's something that they would want to know. So they did get the autopsy reports and like crime photos, and the parents, I believe, made note that the kids were their kids were pretty consistently sleeping in the same positions that the DeFeo children were found after they had passed.
That
which
doesn't feel good.
Yeah, which is creepy and just like
Especially
deeply
if you know
unsettling.
That information.
Yeah, especially if it happens once, you're like, okay, weird. And then if it happens a couple of times, it's like deeply unsettling. And I can see how like there's some bias in there, like you're almost expecting that, especially because I think the kids were sleeping in the same rooms that the DeFeo kids were sleeping in just because of how the house was set up.
Right. There's like obviously the primary bedroom that the parents are in. And then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The daughter of the Lutz family, so the family that moves into the house, had an imaginary friend who's the kids didn't know anything, I think, about the crime, but the parents did. Okay. And the daughter told her parents of her own volition that her imaginary friend's name was one of the names of...
It was like Dawn.
I think it was... Yeah, maybe Dawn. Yeah. Okay. And so that was deeply unsettling. I don't know if the parents did anything about that. They were just like...
Can I ask?
Yeah.
I think it's absurd that this family would move into this house, especially knowing this information.
Yes, I agree too.
Okay. I was like, I don't know if it's just like, I've been fortunate enough to be able to buy a house, so I'm like blinded by that. Like,
I don't know their economic situation. Right. I assume that it was like this. It's a really nice property. Like it has a pool. It has ocean views. Like it's in an upscale neighborhood-ish from what I can tell. So I don't.
It sounds like say the name of the original family that owned the home.
DeFeo.
It sounds like they were relatively well off. Yeah. But like even as a person that does not necessarily prescribe to the paranormal, it just feels like such like vibes. Like bad vibes. Just like maybe even almost in my mind.
I would always be thinking about it.
Yes, especially at night.
Especially like one murder feels like okay. I mean like murders happen, but like this is like something so unique and violent and like atrocious.
When you visit memorials that are built at the place where like the tragedy or massacre or whatever like happened, and you know that like some of the trees you're looking at witnessed that event. Yeah. Like that's always so powerful.
You're always going to be thinking about that.
Right. And so to be in that situation and like, hey, like this is the room that father was in the last night before he went upstairs. Like I'm following the footsteps of, Ron Jr. or whatever, not even intentionally, but like this is the path that he took. Like there will be times where you are falling into line with the events of that night, and not just that feels really unsettling to me.
It's deeply unsettling.
And it makes me question the family that decides to move in there.
And that's fair.
Okay.
A lot of the public does as well.
Probably not the first person to raise that.
100%.
Okay. Cool.
So the daughter has this imaginary friend. This is like the most unsettling, at least for me, is that at some point the mother, Kathy, goes outside and sees her daughter up on the roof, like at the edge of the roof, and she has to like get her daughter down, and she's like, what the fuck were you doing up there? Right. And she's like, oh, well, my friend told me that if I jumped, we could be friends forever. Deeply unsettling.
Yep.
The other really creepy one is that Kathy had dreams
Kathy's the mother.
The mother had dreams from the perspective of Ron Jr. and was able to like recount the order of which the family died, which was not a fact that she had been given or that was publicly released.
Yeah, the priest is right. Why are you still there?
Why are you there? Yeah.
Why are you there?
No, yeah. Anyway, that's that.
Tear it down and build a community garden. Like, I know I love my open green space because I'm a millennial, but like, for real, tear it down and build a community garden.
This house still stands.
And put a plaque. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
Did they turn it into like a come tour the Amityville house?
No, so I talk about this later, but it was originally 112 Ocean Ave in Amityville, and the current owners have changed the address number to 108 because there was just so many people that would come and like trespass and come take pictures of their house. So it was an effort to try and make it harder to find here. So
people live there now?
Yeah, I mean,
my perception
it was sold,
on them
I think,
is the same perception of Because like the people that own it now definitely know the details of the crime.
To be fair, none of the people that have lived in the house since the Lutzes allegedly have at least come forward about any paranormal activity. Which could be an effort to avoid public media, but also, so this is the house originally.
I mean,
it's beautiful.
Yeah. You have a sunroom, you have a deck. I mean, it's a classic New England look too, with like the windows peeking out from the roof. Like it's kind of like barn shape, but like in a classic estate sense.
This is it now. This is from the last time it was listed on Redfin.
How do you feel about the... Like, of course, it would be listed on Redfin when they sell it, but still.
You can't see any of the inside pictures. I think the owners have probably removed them.
Yeah.
But,
how do you feel about the color of their siding?
I hate it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, it's like, is this
I feel like they just tried to make it as like unremarkable as possible.
As truly missable as possible.
Yeah, it's like a faint tan greenish. It's just like, it's fine, you know? Okay, so... that all happens. The Lutzes move in. They move out. What you need to know about the rest of the Amityville case is that Ron Jr., the perpetrator of the crime, his lawyer tries to get the insanity defense. Sure. Obviously. And so...
what crime that heinous that like defies logic? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like that. I think that's actually the only way that you could potentially... he pled insanity. It did not work. He still was guilty. I don't remember if it was first degree or second degree murder. But he was sentenced to 6 consecutive sentences of 25 years each. So one set for each victim.
Okay.
I think that's really...
Is Ron Jr. still alive?
Couldn't tell you. Didn't care.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
That's actually really good and healthy.
Yes. I was like, I could not be bothered. Also, like, if you're interested in this case, there's so many documentaries. There's so many podcasts. It is like one of the most well-known paranormal cases, especially because of what we're going to talk about next. There's a lot of resources out there. So it felt a little redundant for me to go into a lot of depth about this. So obviously, as Grant mentioned, people are questioning the Lutzes.
Yeah.
Because they're like, literally, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So they're getting a lot of attention. And one source that I read said that the Lutzes ended up giving the exclusive like interview story, whatever, to one news source. And this news source, I didn't get her name, was not like big in the parapsychology community, but like knew the people in this community. Parapsychology being like the study of paranormal activity. Yeah. And so she knew the big players in this, which is...
they're talking to their Sir Conan Arthur Doyle.
Yes.
Not that... listen, we, about a year and a half ago, did an episode on Houdini, and everything keeps coming back.
Everything rotates around Houdini and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Who is both a huge believer in ghosts and the writer of the Sherlock Holmes series.
Yeah. Absolutely insane. And he does get mentioned later.
Good. Of course he does.
Of course he does.
He's glitter. We can't get him off our hands.
And I'm not mad about it, honestly. So people are skeptical. They give this interview right to this reporter who's big in the parapsychology community. And so she knows the 2 biggest players of all of the time. This is in the like mid-70s. We're getting towards Satanic Panic era. And
is one of them the Long Island Medium?
I forgot about her. No, not her. Incredible. Also mentioned in the Houdini episode. I think she had something with trumpets. That might actually be totally wrong.
Good.
Mina Crandon and the and the trumpet lady get confused for me. So, to be fair, before we get into the people that this reporter calls in, or George calls in, sources kind of disagreed on who called these investigators.
George
in.
is the father of the Lutz family.
Lutz father, yeah. So Kathy and George did pass a lie detector test, which, I mean, you can take at face value. You cannot. To me, what this means is that they believe what they say.
Right.
That could be interpreted as a lot of ways. Also, like, lie detector tests are notoriously like not super accurate, but the fact that they both pass the lie detector test tells me that at least they believe some of what they're saying.
Okay.
You know, everyone's experiences are different, right? But the public is like, you only did this for the public fame afterwards. And they're like, why the fuck would we have done that to ourselves? And so
Did it financially ruin them?
I mean, it probably didn't help that they had to buy another house.
Sure.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some lawsuits. We'll get a lot deeper into the lawsuits surrounding all of the stories that we're going to talk about. But there was some issue with like the ownership of the story because this then gets turned into a book, which gets turned into a movie.
Right.
And so it becomes a whole thing. And there's lawsuits relating to the ownership of the rights of that story.
Right.
After the Lutz family leaves the house and they put it on the market, it was eventually bought by James and Barbara Cromartie, who lived there for a decade with no, at least reported, paranormal activity.
Okay.
And that starts a list of a number of people who have bought and lived in the house.
And they were there for, you said, how long?
A decade.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So back to the reporter. The reporter calls in Ed and Lorraine Warren. So back to the reporter. The reporter calls in Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Okay.
Do those names ring any bells for you?
Nope.
Excellent. Those of you who know already know. But Lorraine in 2005 said about this case, saying, quote, "The case itself has affected our personal lives more than any other case we've worked on in the 54 years of our research. By the time Ed and Lorraine's career comes to an end, they at least claim, and a lot of sources have numbers that are kind of around this 10,000 cases that they've investigated.
Whoa.
That are related to paranormal. And some of them they even say are like, we walked in and we're like, your plumbing system is wrong. Like there is not a ghost here. You just have bad pipes.
Right.
And so I don't know if they count those or not.
See, what you have here is a mongoose. And
Yeah.
we saw this first. I listened.
It's actually a
I
ferret.
listened.
Yeah.
That's what did we name that episode?
Friends in Strange Places.
Friends in Strange Places.
That one's
Absolutely.
also mentioned later.
Good.
I mean, it all comes around.
We have our niches. I did 2 back-to-back Vietnam War episodes.
Yeah, no, it's true. Per a 2024 article, despite all of this, one of the Lutz's sons, Daniel, now lives a quiet life in Queens and still to this day claims that that house ruined his life, and he still has nightmares about it to this day. I believe he is the one that did the documentary. I think it's on Hulu, and it's called My Amityville Horror instead of the Amityville Horror, and he talks about his experience there. And obviously you can argue he was like a young-ish boy, so like his perception of things could have been skewed. But again, like his experience is real, whether or not you believe in the paranormal or not.
Okay.
So, yeah. So the Amityville house most recently sold in 2017 for $605,000, which
Still probably cheaper than the neighborhood average, right?
Yeah. Which is about, like, adjusted for inflation, like $789,000, which is, I mean, expensive, but it was sold obviously to an undisclosed buyer. The purchase price was $200,000 under asking. Yeah. Since the original crime occurred, 4 families have lived in the house prior to this 2017 buyer. And like I mentioned, the number of the address has changed because to avoid or to like ward off people who are just trying to see the house for the sake of seeing the house. So as I mentioned, also the book or this story becomes a book called The Amityville Horror, written in 1977. And then in 1979, Stuart Rosenberry created it into a movie, which seems to be the preferred version of the story. There's also a 2009 version.
When did that first movie come out?
79.
79.
Yeah. So
and then the other one came out, what year? 2009?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
2009 stars Ryan Reynolds and Melissa George.
Okay. That's crazy. I think then it was the 79 movie that I remember seeing. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. That seems to be everyone's preferred version.
Because I think I saw it in the 90s when I wouldn't have clocked how old it was.
Yes. Yeah. There's also a lot of rumors about the house. A lot of people disagree with the fact that George says he saw like a red room that wasn't on the floor plan. That room doesn't exist. And so, I mean, he could have been hallucinating or whatever. But there's also another rumor that says that the house was built on a Shinnecock burial ground, which is an indigenous group in the area.
Right.
There's no evidence that that's true. And also that indigenous group is not the correct group for that area.
Okay.
I didn't write down the name.
And is that a trope that had existed in paranormal reporting before?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe not as popular, but another one being that one of the residents, whose name was John Ketchum, I swear to God, spelled the same.
Catch 'em all.
Was a satanic worshiper. There was another rumor that
Sorry, so he threw like elegant dinner parties with like the appropriate wine pairings, a lot of candles.
yeah, I made friends recently on Reddit with
Good
this
for
guy.
you. Sorry, I haven't done something like that.
Yeah, fuck you. I at least connected with a guy
you.
on Reddit who runs a satanic podcast, and it's like funded by the Satanic Temple.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, yes. Okay. Yes.
And it's like actually like really solid. And the like most recent episode that I listened to was like, is the United States a Christian nation? And they literally just talk about the like ethicality of being a Christian nationalist. And it's just like,
if they're looking for guests, that's like legitimately.
They literally responded. We had like a whole thread of comments,
Oh,
and they're like,
cool.
they listened to us too, and we're like, this is
fun.
amazing. And then they were like, if you're ever looking to like just like shoot the shit with a satanic worshiper or whatever, or like anything, I was like, let me know. And I was like,
yes. Well, okay. Sorry. Can we pivot for like just 60 seconds on this? So the Satanic Church of America is a lot like the belief in the Pastafarians. You're familiar with Pastafarians?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So in the U.S., there is this religion known as Pastafarians that believe God, in their definition, is a giant spaghetti monster in the sky. And part of their religious paraphernalia is
wearing a colander.
Right, wearing a noodle strainer on their head in official government photos. And what it does is it actually tests the government's definition of religion and what is and isn't permissible. And we always have this really interesting conversation in my debate classes.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we'll do tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
As I toss it
You're
to
hearing
them.
it live.
Because while obviously several of our students first take it as like a mockery of religion. And listen, they're not being as respectful as they could be about it. Like 100%. There is a certain level of like
it's
parody and mockery
not necessarily
of it.
mocking the religion, it's mocking the government's treatment of religion.
Right, because what it really is doing is testing the fence for how broad the government can and cannot define religion. And so the Pastafarians are really cool in that sense. And then the Satanic Church of America is a lot like that too, but then actually elevates it even more.
Yes.
Like I think it was some Midwest state, either Kansas, Oklahoma, maybe Texas, where they were going to allow members of the clergy to be official school counselors, and that's the only credential that you needed was to be an official clergy member of a religion. And so Satanic Church of America submitted about 1,000 applications for their priests to be counselors in Texas schools under that proposed law, and it got shot down.
Of course,
the 1,000 application, that could be like a random number, but I do know that like the Satanic Church was like, wonderful, we would love to send in satanic priests and talk about like them and our religious perspective. And suddenly the state of Texas is increasingly feeling right. Was like, oh no, that's not.
Never
that's
mind.
not what we
Didn't
were going
want
for.
that actually.
Right.
My favorite story of the Satanic Temple is their view on abortion. Because
it's an important religious practice.
It's an important religious practice, and they made it even like ceremonial. And so you like the abortion laws essentially protect religious practices still. And so if you go to the Satanic Temple like website, they have I think it's called the RRR on their website. It says, consistent with our tenets that call for bodily autonomy and acting in accordance with best scientific evidence, the Satanic Temple religiously objects to many of the restrictions that states have enacted that interfere with abortion access. And they go on to say that they inherently support LGBTQI members and how important bodily autonomy is. And then they have a religious abortion ritual on their website. So you can say, if you like enroll to be a member of the Satanic Temple, the government like legally can't really tell you that you can't get an abortion.
Which, if I remember correctly, at least partially traces its roots back to indigenous communities in North America, arguing that the use of cannabis and cannabis products was a part of their like indigenous cultural heritage, which is a part of their religious expression. And so I remember as a kid, at least in Nebraska in the 90s and early 2000s, being like, weed's illegal except for some Native American tribes. And because it was early 2000s and Nebraska, we weren't saying Native American tribes, but I mean, not like full on racism, but just not a term we really use anymore. Yeah.
My favorite part that I actually didn't realize until I was looking this up is that this practice also, you know, I mean, you may not know, if you go in to get an abortion, there's like mandatory things you have to do. Like you have to get an ultrasound. States, you have to like read all of this material.
48-hour waiting period.
Exactly. So being a member of this Satanic Temple exempts you from having to do that because it's a religious ritual. And like the only thing you have to do is What is it? Recitation of 2 of our tenets and personal affirmation that is ceremoniously intertwined with the abortion.
Wow.
Fucking incredible.
I do kind of love that in an episode about a horror movie, in talking about the people that might have welcomed evil spirits in before, you mentioned a quote unquote satanic worshiper, and you and I are both like, yes!
Let's talk about it.
Like at times we are the caricature that Fox News paints us out to be, but it's fun.
I mean, I have to go get my weekly abortion next week.
Right, absolutely.
You know?
Get me some hot chips on your way back, okay?
Charge phone, do crime.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're going to talk about Ed and Lorraine Warren. Lorraine Rita Moran.
And to get people caught up after what was probably a 7-minute dive.
Yes.
See, I did read the survey feedback.
Look at you.
It hurt my feelings, but that's fine.
It had to. Yeah.
I don't know if it had to, but it did.
To rebuild you.
These people are mediums brought in by the Lutzes.
Yes.
To
or the
argue
reporter,
their
or
experience was real and something that has happened.
There is another part of it where potentially Ron Jr.'s lawyer wanted to use their evidence in order to bring the case back to court to then say that Ron Jr. had been possessed by something in the house. It was haunted
before the crime and that the haunting actually drove him to clever legal strategy.
It didn't work, but sure.
Also kind of glad to hear that too.
Yes. We're going to see this another time that the Warrens are involved in a situation where legally their experience, people want to use it to claim like the insanity defense or essentially the devil made me do it. There is a case called the devil made me do it case. It's not this one. It is one that will happen that we'll talk very briefly about later. But that's another thing that will happen. Okay. So the Warrens, Lorraine Warren was born January 31st of 1927. She, as a young child, had kind of like clairvoyant and medium experiences. So a medium, as again covered in the Houdini episode Now You See Me, someone who can mediate and communicate between spirits of the dead and the living. So that's someone who would hold seances. Yeah. And then clairvoyant is someone who can like get visions of the future or like perceive events which have yet to unfold. The other thing Lorraine does say that she was able to do as a young child, starting around the age of like 9, was see people's auras. And it was so to the point, like so normal to her, to where she thought everyone could see everyone else's auras. And she went to a all-girls Catholic school. And there were 2 nuns, like a mother superior, so like the head nun, and then another nun that were like kind of in charge of everything. And the way she found out that this was not a normal thing was that she told those nuns that not mother superior, the other nun had a brighter aura than mother superior. And she was told like, hey,
that's witchcraft.
Keep that to yourself. There was another instance where her and her like classmates were planting a tree. And she says that she was able to see what that tree would look like in the future. And so the like nuns saw her like looking up where there was nothing. Right. And they were like, what are you looking at? And she was like, oh, the tree. Like, and they were like, there is no tree there. Fucking weird.
How do you solve a problem like Lorraine?
Yeah. Literally. And then, okay. In 1944, she's around 16, 17. She goes to a theater with some friends to, I believe, watch a movie. I think it was a movie, where she meets the usher, who was named Ed. There's some sources say that this was like a date that she went on, and then some sources say her friends were trying to set her up. Some say she was going with her mom. Either way, she meets Ed. At this point, Lorraine claims that she met Ed and then saw a vision of Ed as like an adult and got like the impression that like she would spend the rest of her life with Ed. And she did.
When you know.
Yeah.
Singing podcast.
Bring it back.
Haven't done it in a while.
You haven't. So Ed, what's about to happen in the 40s, Grant?
World War II,
World
famously.
War II, sure, yep. And so Ed is enrolled in the Navy, and he gets deployed in 44, I believe. Okay. So around the same year that they meet. And he's in the Navy, and he has a traumatic, like, near-death experience where his boat sinks. Okay. And he is one of a handful of survivors. I don't know how many people survived, but either way, this was a very traumatic experience. He gets a 30-day leave called survivor's leave, and he goes back to Lorraine, and he's like, life is so precious, and they get married.
Now.
And So they get married. A year later, they have their first child. First and only child.
Next year or next 9 months later?
Well, it is 45.
Okay.
46. I think it's 46 where she gives birth. They get married in 45. Either way. The other thing you need to know about Ed is that he grew up in a house that he believes was haunted. And so he's always kind of had an interest in it, in the paranormal. But that's kind of where that ended.
Sorry, it's just giving when you lie on the first date because you're trying to connect. I
also had a haunted house.
Yeah, I can't see auras, but
I can.
Yeah, I think it's so crazy that we have that in
wild.
common. What are you doing after this?
Yeah. Do you have time? Or is your mattress on the floor? Let me know.
It's like I don't believe in love, but I believe in love more than I believe in the paranormal. So it's good. Okay, we're finding out where things stack for me. That's good to hear.
So Ed comes back from the war and he takes art classes at the Perry Art School, which is a subsidiary of Yale. By the way, they're in Connecticut. I don't know if I mentioned that. They live in Connecticut. I think Bridgeport. And so he takes art classes, begins painting houses specifically, and he'll sell these paintings for like $3 to $5 each, and they're of like local famous houses. And so that ends up kind of supporting them for a while. He also is interested in painting haunted houses because that's like
it's what him and Lorraine bonded over originally.
So he paints haunted houses. He will throw little ghosts into those paintings, and then him and Lorraine also subscribe to a magazine called Fate magazine, and so that will do like articles on haunted houses kind of around the country. And so him and Lorraine on like their road trips or vacations will go visit these other haunted houses just for shiggles, just to see them. The same reason the Amityville house has now changed their address is because of this. And so they would go visit these houses, and Ed would paint them, and then he would give the paintings to Lorraine, who was the more charming of the two of them, and Lorraine would give them to the homeowners. I think under like no pretense, but essentially oftentimes the homeowners would then say like, oh, like, do you want to like talk about the house? Do you want to hear anything about the house? Because they just got this painting of this house. And so they end up kind of making a name for themselves by literally just going around and visiting houses, and people would start knowing who they were.
Okay.
Exactly. And so they're essentially in the right place at the right time is their whole career strategy. They never planned to really have a career in the paranormal, but they start getting called in as like backup to help in these like paranormal investigation cases. And so, yeah, I've mentioned this. Some sources, the Warrens would frequently encounter cases that had non-supernatural explanations. And this is a quote, "You don't have a ghost. Your house is warping because of a water leak."
Ooh, it's causing a lot of anxiety right now, but okay.
Yeah. And so Ed slowly, after more and more like education and like research into the subject of the paranormal, becomes what we call a demonologist, which is literally, I think him and Lorraine both technically were demonologists. It just means that you're like well educated in the paranormal and demons and spirits and all of that stuff. There's no certification or anything. They're just demonologists. You know?
Great.
Yeah.
We have started to call ourselves demonologist.
Yeah.
Is that their credentials? Okay.
Basically. They also never charged for their cases. So even when they were specifically called, they never asked for money in return, which paints them as like this like good-hearted, like they're not getting anything out of this. You have to remember that later on they will make money from like book tours and selling books from writing about these stories and being consults for movies, and they get paid for like, again, the Satanic Panic is coming.
Right.
And so colleges will pay them to come and do lectures about the paranormal.
But they're basically like Ed and Lorraine, devil's advocates.
Yeah.
I workshopped it for about 60 seconds in my head. I'm disappointed in the execution, but thank you for appreciating
it was good though. No, I understand disappointment in the execution.
Devil's advocate for those of you who missed it.
I want a logo that says that on it. Okay, in 1952, the couple founds the New England Society of Psychic Research.
If you're uncredentialed in every way that matters, can you really found a society? Asking for myself.
Because this is like kind of a branch off of the Society for Cyclical Research, which was not founded, but like Harry Houdini worked with them when he was trying to debunk mediums. Right, he worked with like a jury of people, and one of those people was the president of the Society of Psychical Research, and I believe it's founded in the UK, so this is the New England version. Okay. And Harry Price, who is mentioned in the Jeff the Mongoose episode,
Right.
was one of the heads of the cyclical research in the UK. And so now we're getting like this specifically US branch of this. In the mid-70s is when the Warrens' career will really skyrocket. Their first big case is in 1971, and it's the Lindley Street poltergeist. Do you know what a poltergeist is?
A pothole, right?
Ooh, no. The Poltergeist is actually one of the only horror movies I think I have ever watched in my entire life.
Okay.
Poltergeists are like, if they're not really malevolent, they can be seen as almost playful. They're like, they'll just move shit around in your house.
But it's a ghost.
It's a spirit, yeah, essentially. Okay. Like, in the Poltergeist movie, the only reason I was able to watch it as a kid is because when you finally see the Poltergeist, it's just like so obvious that it's just like on strings because this movie came out in like the 70s, right? Like it's so obviously a puppet, and there's like the special effects are like just bad enough where you're like, no, this is not real. But they're known for moving things around specifically.
So there's one on the street,
Lindley
Street, that's moving things around.
Lindley Street, yes. Very quickly after that will be the Amityville case, which they get called in to investigate.
Okay. Boy, they hit the big times then quick then.
Real quick. Okay. And then they have the Smurl case, which I literally did no fact-finding on, so don't ask me about that one because I don't know. And at this time, if you're going to like read a book about one of these cases or watch a movie about one of these cases, like the Amityville Horror movie, the original one that came out in the 70s, the Warrens are not mentioned, but you know because of pop culture and like the news, you know that the Warrens are involved, even if you like they're not shown as characters. The Warrens are actually devout Catholics. They grew up in the Roman Catholic Church and continued to believe in that, which is,
I guess,
yeah.
Like, so one, not raised Catholic, so already not an expert on this. Idea. I mean, we've both shared about our Lutheran upbringings, but like, I wouldn't be shocked if they were like evangelicals. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be shocked if they were like Lutherans or maybe even like Methodists or Episcopalians, denominations of Christianity that view a more personal relationship with God. But as I understand Catholicism, there's a couple of different layers between you and God.
Yes, I think so.
And like, there's kind of some reverence and respect for like that structure. And this kind of feels not part of that structure.
And this is where I really vibe with the Warrens.
Okay.
Because they would go into a haunted house and like one of their first things would be to contact like the local Catholic church and be like, hey, we need an exorcism here. Or like, hey, we need like a blessing on this house or whatever. And a lot of times those churches would be like, literally no.
Like who are you?
Like literally what? And this is a quote from Ed saying, quote, you would be shocked how many Catholic priests don't believe there is a devil.
Whoa.
And that's just really profound.
Oh, that's complicated.
Like I have to think about that. I had to think about that for a while. I was like, oh, Jesus.
Part of me is like, are they saying no because they don't believe there's a devil? Or are they saying no because they don't believe these two people that are outside the like traditional structure of the Catholic Church? Maybe they're not. Maybe there's like a long history of like, I was going to say demon slayers, but I think that's an anime. Like maybe there's a long line of like demon investigators inside the Catholic Church that's more independent that I'm unaware of when
Ed
it comes
and Lorraine
to that
Warren
history.
are essentially one of the first
devil advocates.
Known. I really want that on a t-shirt.
It's red.
Advocate for devil's advocates.
Social club, because everything needs to end with social club.
Everything has to have a social club. This is another quote. I think this is from like a reporter or something. Quote, in a world that scoffs at ghosts and laughs at the unusual, the Warrens deliver a contrary message. That message is, the fairy tale is true, the devil exists, God exists. Which is like, at least unique.
Right.
You know? And what I also love about the Warrens is that once they started getting public notoriety, they were absolutely not afraid to use that against you.
Oh.
Specifically the church. If they asked for help from the church and the church said no, you can bet your ass they were going on interviews and being like, we asked these people for help and they said no. They're a Church of Christ. Like, what are they doing?
Whoa.
At one point...
we uncredentialed founders of the Society for Mediums came in here and said, this one, not a plumbing issue. You got demons. And the Catholic Church was like, who are you? Get out of my rectory. And we think you should know that.
Yeah. Literally.
I don't know how the Warrens managed to get me kind of on the side of the Catholic institution. I need to move away from that a little bit.
I'm still for this. I'm on the side of the Warrens. I'm like, yeah, you called them out, babes. Like, I don't care if you actually, if that's a real haunting. The Smurl haunting, the one that I did absolutely no fact finding on, it got so far up that they got the Vatican's attention.
What?
And they got someone who would become the Pope, I think before Francis, or maybe before that, I don't remember the name, but they got a future Pope to come and do an exorcism or benediction or fucking whatever it
the
is.
first time 3 before me still let the question get to me.
Yeah. Literally. Ed and Lorraine Warren, this is where they lose me, is that they believe that a lack of religious belief also isn't going to like mean that you're going to get like a paranormal experience, but it does mean you're more susceptible to a paranormal experience. The devil's only in
godless homes.
However, it's not just God. They respected any religion.
Now I'm back in.
Exactly. if you had a different religion, they would find representatives of your religion to come in and do whatever it is that they do, which I thought was cool.
Hi, we're the Warrens. We're investigating a demon sighting here in Denver, Colorado. The house is owned by 2 Satan worshipers, so we called in priests from the Satanic Church of America to help us out. This is our stories. Da-dum!
Fuck yeah. I would
and
watch
then that's
that.
how we sell advocate for devil advocate shirts.
I have another
I have another
movie idea. Wait.
You're like, that sounds like a beautiful movie. And I go, I once did a couple of marketing simulations my senior year of high school.
Which is so ironic because I'm so deep in marketing right now and I hate it. Shout out to Aileen for helping me. She sent me like a bunch of screenshots and was like, you can analyze data better than me. And I was like, babe, I don't know what any of this means.
That's because she's a real advocate for devil's advocates. You know what I mean? Okay.
She was like,
3rd time's a charm. Yeah. Got it in.
Okay.
We can retire her.
Perfect. So like I mentioned, the Warrens also did lecture circuits for colleges, and because of Satanic Panic, which is this like movement that came around the U.S. around this time in the like late 70s, early 80s, where do you know more about this?
Yeah, because there's actually going to be 2 quick little waves of Satanic Panic. Yeah. The first is in, late 70s, early 80s. And then you're going to see it again in the 90s. And it's basically just like, we got to prepare these teenagers for the devil because he's going to knock on their door literally at any second. And usually it's like a response to like, look at all these young people wearing black these days. And did you notice they don't pray as much? Yeah. You know, like there are reactions to that. And then there's other things too, like Satanic Panics usually corresponded with like what was permissible on TV, movie, the radios or music, like moving forward as well. So like it is absolutely like not a coincidence that you see like a spike in Satanic Panic stuff in the 90s as rap music kind of becomes more popular, right? Like it's this, and for the people that believe in a Satanic Panic, you know, for those on the outside, it's like clear, like you're hawking influence. You're trying to like preserve like a way of life and worldview that like stymies individuality and like insist on a moral code that not everyone has prescribed to. Yeah, but for people inside the panic, they're like legitimately concerned for your soul because they believe in forces that you don't believe in. And
they also believe that like there's already an infiltration of satanic worshipers and satanic related crimes and all of this that are already infiltrating our community. And there was also an increase in the same kinds of things that would happen during spiritualism, increases in seances and like the belief in the paranormal essentially. And so what Ed and Lorraine Warren were doing with these lecture circuits, at least in their mind, was they were telling these kids to like, hey, you might think it's like super cool to like invoke the spirits of the dead by like playing with this Ouija board or like having the seance. But what you don't know is that you're actually opening yourself up to all of this like dangerous stuff. And we'll tell you about what we've experienced. Right. And Em and Christine refer to it as the DARE program for the occult. And I love that.
Because the Warrens go around and start talking to congregations, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, like schools, like colleges.
Oh, they're not being hired by like churches and things?
I mean, like, I don't think so, because I don't think they were really on the good side of the church.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was mostly colleges, from what I understand. This is Ed and Lorraine Warren. I'm not sure what year this was taken in, but I love Lorraine in this picture. I chose this because Lorraine really looks like she knows something you don't.
She is, yes. I'm not shocked at their profession now that I have seen this photo.
Yes.
That fits.
Yeah.
Lorraine has the kind of smile that the cartoon version of the Grinch had as it would fade to the next scene.
Yes.
And Ed fought in World War II.
Yeah, he looks like he fought in World War II, 100%. Like, after reading about Ed and Lorraine Warren, I was pretty sure I knew what Lorraine looked like, and I was right. Ed, no fucking idea. He could have looked like any white man, and he does.
Someone recently was like, Grant, you do such a good job of like describing on an audio platform a visual source, and I was at first moved and now just feel crushing pressure around every single assignment. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, babes.
You're welcome.
Also, what a head fake, because I thought we were talking about the Amityville Horror, and instead we're actually talking about the Warrens. I realized this about 3 minutes ago. I was like, what a really long setup for whatever the next part of the Amityville thing is. And so if you two are now realizing that this is not about Amityville, bye. I'm sure there's a great documentary that you're going to go listen to or stay with us. But this is great. I'm actually really liking this.
Right.
You know I love human interest.
I knew I wanted to do Ed and Lorraine Warren because you said Bump in the Night, and I was like,
Perfect.
that's literally the only story I can think of, and therefore I must do it. And then I started researching it, and I was telling Grant about this a little bit, that I was like, God, they have so many cases, but paranormal cases, and hopefully, like, if you believe in the paranormal and deeply disagree with me, I'm sorry. I just think paranormal cases can be a bit mundane and like repetitive,
especially if you weren't there to experience it.
Yeah, like I'm sure it's like there have been moments where I've been like, holy shit, there's a ghost in this house. Like you hear a door open when you're house sitting alone, which is exactly what happened to me, and I was like, absolutely not. I'm gonna die tonight. And that's so much more scary in the moment, but like hearing about it or like watching a documentary about it, you're like, oh my God.
So here's something I didn't tell you.
Yeah.
I also tell you guys. So I went on a sunrise hike this morning.
Yes.
Hold for eye roll.
Of course, Grant has to tell you about that.
It's always great, like in the moment, like once you're actually doing it. But when that alarm goes off, it's especially
it's the
hard.
worst, yeah.
So my alarm went, because it's a sunrise hike and we're getting into the summer. My alarm today went off at 4:30 in the morning,
so early.
which is earlier than I get up normally by a lot.
Yeah.
And my alarm goes off. And you're kind of in that twilight, and I think I hear something, but I don't really know. And like,
especially because you're still in a newish house,
right?
Yeah.
But because I know my body is going to fall back asleep, I have set 3 timers within 3-minute intervals, so it's just going to constantly be abrasive.
Yep.
I have enough time to get my bearings before the next one goes off. So the second one goes off at 4:33. I pause it. I like turn over. I like turn on a lamp. Like I'm waking up and I'm laying in bed. And I hear it again, and it's like a loud thud, and there's like almost like glass moving and stuff like that.
No.
And so it's a townhome, garage, living area, second floor, bedrooms on the 3rd floor. So I'm like, someone's on the 2nd floor of my house. It sounds like it's coming from inside my house. And I like sit up, and I hear the sound again, and now it's very loud that I'm not like surrounded by my pillows. And it's coming from outside. And so I go over to my window and I look through the blinds. The elementary school across the street was getting its breakfast orders for the week. And it was like literally a delivery truck, like moving stuff. And so that was like the sound of the shaking and everything.
You forget how long it takes you to adjust to like a new place to live, right?
Yes.
And then like 6 months in, you're like, oh my God, okay. I thought someone was like breaking in through a window.
Well, and the nice thing about being in a townhome where I'm at the end of the block, so that I only have one shared wall. But basically it's actually been... It's been really comforting because anytime I hear a sound I don't recognize, I'm like, oh, it's just a shared wall. But this one felt so like personal and in the space. And it's
especially
it was
in the morning, everything feels like really quiet.
And it was because it was coming through the window, not like through the wall, which is why it felt so different.
Right.
But no, it's terrifying at the time.
Terrifying. Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna briefly mention some of the paranormal experiences that I'm not going to mention again. I actually am not sure. In 1991, there was a made-for-TV movie called The Haunted, which covers the Smurl case. Again, the one that I did absolutely no fact-finding on. 1992, there was a best-selling book called In a Dark Place, which was co-written by, I believe, a horror author named Ray Garton. And it was... covers a story which would eventually be retold in the 2009 film called The Haunting in Connecticut. The family who lived there was the Snedekers, and they claimed to see ghosts of people whose bodies had formerly passed through their home, which was once a mortuary.
Oh, no.
My worst nightmare.
Nope.
And that eventually turned into a demonic possession. And then this is the part that I am probably not going to talk a bunch about. Here are some of the cases that you probably know them for.
The Warrens.
Okay. The Annabelle doll. Do you know about that?
A little bit. It was like
haunted
it would
ass
move
fucking doll. Yeah,
did
there's
it talk
also
at
a
times?
movie about Annabelle. I'm not sure if it talked. Basically, the Annabelle doll that's portrayed in movies is like a porcelain doll. What it actually was a Raggedy Ann doll that was gifted to a nurse, I believe, a nursing student named Donna in 1970 for her 28th birthday.
We've talked about this in the past, my like picture perfect Norman Rockwell childhood. And I think I've told you the story. Do you remember the story about the movie Annabelle's Wish?
Oh, yeah.
VHS tape. It's a little calf that can talk, and the farm boy who lives on the farm is deaf or mute, one of the two. And the talking calf meets Santa and gives the boy a voice for Christmas.
It's like Ariel in reverse.
Yeah, or the ability to hear one of the two. Basically, like the boy can hear his parents for the first time, or he can say I love you to his parents for the first time.
Oh.
And as that happens
God.
at the end of the movie, it like pans out and the calf has turned into a reindeer and is flying off with Santa, and the calf gets to live forever.
Bro, what the fuck?
No, I know. And it was like one of my all-time favorite movies.
Well, we have to watch it now.
I honestly am afraid to watch it because I'm not sure how much Christian nationalism is pumped into it. You know how you do that when you like
Yes.
look back at movies from the early 2000s and you're like, whoa, no wonder Bush was elected twice.
So I think
don't think so.
I was
Go ahead.
saved from a lot of that because my mom was not raised religious,
Okay.
but my dad was. And I think she recognized that and was like, ew, no. But this did happen. And if Michelle, you're listening, I love you. And
Right.
you know where I am at. We watched a movie called Contact. It has Matthew McConaughey in it, which was
Okay.
great. But it's like literally a movie about a scientist who's like trying to make contact with aliens. And then it kind of turns, and then Matthew McConaughey plays this like pastor. And Casey grew up watching this movie. And so it was really nostalgic for him.
Okay.
And then after the movie, he was like, oh, isn't that movie so great? And I was like, I was like, that was a sermon.
Yeah.
That was like a 2-hour long sermon. Because
Yeah.
at the end, she like the premise is that she gets to go visit like this other planet, but it's actually just like heaven.
Okay.
Yeah. And like there's someone is her dad, or like was the actor who played her dad, but it's actually supposed to be God. And I was like,
Right.
are you like, that's cool that you love this
Right.
movie. I don't have the same childhood connection to it that you do. And it was just religious.
I don't mean to be an advocate for devil's advocates here.
Put it on a t-shirt.
But here's the thing.
God.
As I get older, I'm increasingly like going back to those movies with like a certain degree of fondness.
Yes.
Because as an educator of young people,
Dude, I would listen to Matthew McConaughey talk for that long
100%.
again.
But part of me, a lot of times, like, sure, there's like obvious Christian messaging, but the messaging usually boils down to like empathy, care for others, God is real. Which
This one was
like,
more like, why does it matter if anything's in space?
oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. I'm not going to touch on that. I'm going to stay on my train of thought. But it's like I see some of the like movies and television shows that our kids are watching now, and I'm like, I don't think A, you should be watching that at this age, or B, you should be watching nearly the amount of it that you are watching. And
yeah.
that I actually think some of you could really do for like a lightly religious colored movie about like being a good person and loving each other. Like I actually
More Veggie Tales.
a little bit.
Yes.
Like I remember watching Star Wars in a church basement because the youth pastor had managed to convince the elders of the church that
hell
the
yeah.
Force was a metaphor for God. And you know what? Maybe it is.
Maybe.
I haven't explored it. I just remember watching Star Wars in like a relatively safe space.
See, like I could watch Narnia and I feel like
Right.
have the same nostalgia.
Right.
But I feel like if you had never watched Narnia and you watch it now, you're like, Jesus fucking Christ, what?
Yeah,
Did you
yeah,
see
yeah, yeah.
Meryl? Well, you've never watched Narnia, right?
Probably. I think I saw the first one.
You know, Aslan is like a metaphor for God.
Yes, I
told
know
you about
there's
that.
a
Yeah.
lot of like, yes.
Yeah. Apparently, they're making a new Narnia, and Meryl Streep got asked to do the voice of Aslan, and people are not happy about it.
That she said yes or that she said no?
I think it's just Christians are like, but God is not a woman.
Interesting. Okay.
Obviously, I
'Cause
saw
there's
that on the
elements
internet.
of that
So
that are obviously that like really grind our gears. But I don't know. All of this is stemming from an article I read about how America struggles to teach morality, and that's an issue, and a relatively newer one. And so I'm kind of going back to being like, you know, what parts of these like
Dude,
little
religion in and
culture
of
moments
itself,
yeah.
great.
I'm a human being experiencing things, and I don't regret anything that I've said. I think it's all come from a place of truth, but I also think I'm trying to revisit some held perceptions of some
There's
things.
a creator, hold on, that I have to shout out on Instagram if you're interested in any of this at all. It is Montemader. It's Montemadder, and that's on Instagram. And she is like someone who's studied theology deeply and like was a Christian nationalist for a really long time. And now she just like uses her education to like shit on the current Christian nationalist movement.
Right.
And it's just listening to her talk about like history in conjunction with the Bible and how it's written is just like so fascinating. And especially she like really hammers home like the real message here is not what you're doing.
Right.
Which is chef's kiss. Incredible.
Not to like end our conversation here on just like a little kernel of a thought. Yeah. Okay. But just to throw this out there. Well, you don't know what I'm going to ask.
No, I don't.
Increasingly, I'm asking myself, so I'm now asking you. Was it the actual teachings of like a moral authority that I needed to like listen to and seek guidance from that I rejected? Or did I reject the politicalization of an ideology that had taught me to like treat others equally when I viewed that political ideology as hypocritical? Or see both? Please explain your answer.
I can tell you exactly what it was for me.
Okay.
Is that I realized, because I went back to religion in early college and then went out of it again because I was like, I have gay friends and this church no support gay friend.
Right.
And went, why?
Right.
And then said, ooh, never mind. And like, truthfully, I was like doing some self-reflection on one of my many long drives that I have to do now every day.
To work.
Yeah.
It's come for all of our fun baddies. Jacob, Maya, they all have to go to the office.
It's so dumb.
And have been doing it now for a while.
Yeah. It's like been a month. It's ridiculous. It's like a 40 to an hour long drive.
I can't wait for this chapter to be titled Grant and Maya Ponder God. Continue.
I was like, I don't actually know if I would be religious if it wasn't as politicized as it was.
Sure.
I think there's a solid chance I would still be.
Yeah.
But I think the churches, like the church that I grew up in, there was an instance where one of my really close friends had parents that got divorced. And I found out pretty late in that her entire family got like excommunicated from this church because they got divorced. Even my friend who was just an innocent bystander essentially in this situation. And I was like, that literally makes no sense.
Right.
You know, like I still generally agree with the morality taught in religion. Right. But I can't agree with the way that it's used.
I think you and I struggle with either like a power and authority around ethics, and then B, the like practice of that power.
I think you struggle when I tell you to do things, and I struggle when you tell me to do things when it comes to speech and debate, and vice versa for the podcast. Yeah. So that's where we're at.
So we were talking about Annabelle the Haunted Doll about 18 minutes ago.
Yeah. Okay. We're back to Annabelle.
I really do hope we put a chapter so they can just skip this whole.
We will. Okay. We will. Annabelle, JK, Annabelle again. Essentially, this doll would appear in places that they hadn't put it. At some point, it attacked someone. They thought what really was the problem was that they hired a medium to come and like tell them what was going on with the doll because it kept doing weird shit. And this medium told them that it was the spirit of a young girl that had died in the general area that their like apartment or house was at. And the owner of the doll, Donna, essentially was like, I mean, all right, like if you're comfortable with us and you want to stay with us, like by all means stay with us. That's totally fine. And that was the mistake because like it's similar with vampires. You can't, if you invite them into your home, they're now in your home, right? But they can't come in. It's a similar thing with spirits, just like kind of in general. And so she invited the spirit in. And then when the Warrens came onto the scene, they were like, this is not the spirit of a young girl. This is the spirit of a demon who is pretending to be a young girl. You know, so that's Annabelle. Annabelle, the doll, who is real, by the way. I don't know where she is now. There's a lot of these haunted dolls that live in various like occult museums now. Annabelle the doll got taken to the Warren Occult Museum, and I'm not sure what ended up happening to that after both Ed and Lorraine passed.
They formed their own museum.
I think they just got like people were like, take it, I don't want it anymore, to like various like haunted artifacts. And that's happened there's a show called Ghost Adventures on the Travel Channel. I'm not 100% sure, but it's hosted by this guy named Zach Bagans. And if you listen to And That's Why We Drink, Em and Christine, fucking hysterical. They just shit on Zach Bagans all the time. He does these like like his voice is like this and you will never believe what happens next. And it's just like so dramatic. And so they just have these museums of all of these like artifacts from various hauntings. And so Annabelle the doll, at least for a while, if not still does, live at the Warren Occult Museum. And for a while lived in like a box, a wooden box, maybe with like a glass front pane, but the wood was soaked in holy water before she was put in it. Yeah, anyway. And the thing about these dolls too is that there's a lot of like superstition around like looking at them. It's like the blue devil horse at DIA.
Right.
It's like, do I look at it? Do I not look at it? Do I have to look at it or else my plane will crash?
Right.
Or like if I make fun of it, will it like attach to me? Or, you know, like that kind of stuff. So anyway, Annabelle the doll, there's also like a whole movie series about her. Obviously things have been exaggerated in those movies, but Annabelle the doll is real. The Conjuring is the big one that they're known for. So the Conjuring series, there's 3 of them, The Conjuring, The Conjuring 2, and The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Those movies are, the Warrens are represented as actors, like they're actual characters. And this is where we get into some of the legal battles, which we'll talk about later, is that the Warrens are presented as this very loving couple because you need someone to root for in these movies, right? And we'll talk more about that later. So just remember that. The Conjuring 1 follows the Perron family. The Perron family in the 1970s, Carolyn and Roger, move into a Rhode Island farmhouse with their 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April. And essentially, I think this was a poltergeist situation. There's like things that are being moved around. Carolyn, especially, so the mother, begins to be like harassed by the spirits and all of this stuff. Essentially, she does more digging into who lived there, and it was like 8 generations of a family. She gets haunted by this like, I think, demon named Bethesda. Yeah. So that's a whole fucking thing. The Conjuring 2, so Conjuring 1 came out in 2015. Conjuring 2 comes out in 2016. This is the Enfield poltergeist, another poltergeist in London. And then The Nun, which comes out in 2018, which centers around a demon, which is presented in The Conjuring 2. And then we get The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. This is the actual Devil Made Me Do It case. This is where a child is possessed by a demon.
Okay.
They call in someone to do an exorcism. And I think it's like the older brother of this kid. The kid that was possessed, I think, was named David. And then one of his older brothers, Arnie, Arne, is like terrified for his brother. I'm not looking at my notes because, frankly, I it's a whole thing. There's so much coverage of this case. If you want to find it, you can. Okay. Don't cite me on any of this. Arnie is trying to protect his younger brother, and like, you know, in Jurassic World or Jurassic Park, where like the dinosaur's going after a love interest, and the other one is just like, "Hey, over here!
Right. Look at me instead."
Yeah, that's what Arnie does, and the devil possesses him.
Okay.
And then he kills somebody.
Oh, so was possessing younger brother, takes over older brother, older brother then kills somebody.
And then
he
goes to court.
Conjuring, the third one.
This is the third one. Okay. Yeah, this came out in 2021. And yeah, so they try and use literally the possession plea in court.
These are movies based on quote unquote real events.
These are real cases. Okay. Whether there's a documentary that I did at least listen to on Netflix called The Devil on Trial, specifically about this case. And there's a lot. I think one of the brothers, Carl specifically, is like, none of this is true. But then other brothers and like some of the parents and other people surrounding it are like, absolutely, I witnessed all of this. This is like, this was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. So again, everyone's experiences are different.
Right.
It was Arnie Johnson was the one who killed the landlord. There were 6 priests involved in the continuous exorcism. 3 of these priests were reportedly petrified, which then makes me ask questions about the other 3 that weren't petrified.
Right. They're the ones that didn't believe in the devil.
Yeah. And so Arnie was still found guilty first-degree manslaughter on November 24th of 1981. He was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison, but was released 5 years later in 86 for good behavior. And then a book was written called The Devil in Connecticut in 83. And then, in 2007, Carl Glatzel, one of the older brothers, says that the entire thing was a lie.
Okay.
But again, even other people were like, no, it wasn't.
It wasn't a lie.
And so here's a quote from someone who reported on it. Quote, Ed claimed that the justice system has far too long accepted the existence of God when swearing witnesses in, and now it's time for them to accept the existence of the devil.
Whoa.
Again, a profound fucking quote.
I mean, that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Yeah. No, I'm kidding.
Like, that's just... God, okay.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So obviously, there's a lot of skepticism around the Warrens and the cases that they've done.
Famously.
Yeah.
If there's a hater, I'm one of them. Kidding. I don't know enough about him yet.
And so I'm just going to say it from the top. Like, I think you guys have probably picked up on my general perception is that I think there's a lot of exaggeration that goes on in these cases, especially the movies. I think if you're like basing any of your knowledge around what you've seen in the horror movies, or, I mean, the books may be slightly more accurate, but the movies absolutely are 100% point blank exaggerated, and like creative liberties have been taken. I think what has happened is that as the couple got more and more famous, there was more of like a money grab going on. And I think Ed especially got more and more motivated by the fame, the power, and the money. I do think Lorraine, while still probably somewhat motivated by the money, I think she had more intention of helping people than Ed probably did. Regardless, I think both of them knew that some of what they were doing was a lie.
Right.
And that's that. There was never any hard evidence produced from any of their cases. There's a photo from Amityville from when they were investigating the house that's like, it looks like a kid peeking around a corner. I'm not even going to bother showing it. You can Google it if you want. Just Google Amityville Horror picture kid or whatever. And it's a creepy picture if you think it's a ghost.
Right.
I don't. I think it's a person.
Okay.
That was just posed. I can show you, I guess. I'm not going to put it in the episode. But
do I need to see it?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be freaked out because I think you're too
skeptical.
Yeah. And the thing is that it looks like one of the kids that died.
I'm sorry, what?
What I think it is one of the investigators like leaning, or like that's on his knees leaning over, and he's wearing glasses.
Yeah. Like that's obvious. Like in my opinion, that's obviously reflection. Like the grainy black and white photo is an older man. That's not the kid. I
think so. The people that were investigating all kind of, even people that disliked the Warrens and even people that were skeptical of the paranormal in general, all were pretty adamant at the time that like, no, they're like, this was not a person that was there. And we all watched this photo get taken and this photo developed. But I mean...
But, okay, here's one of the big issues I have with like the paranormal when it comes to stuff like this. It's always like a grainy photo in the corner with something obscuring in front of it. Mm-hmm. Like if they are showing themselves to be seen, why is it never clear? There's a completely open door frame that this ghost could stand in.
So here's the thing, is I think this photo got notoriety because this was taken in the 70s. And now... I think like if technology had like completely plateaued past this point, I would still be like, holy fucking shit, that's a creepy ass picture. But now that we've had decades of time to like create technology and investigate this kind of stuff, and we still have no hard evidence. Again, mouse on a plane, could be wrong. We thought the sun revolved around us for like eons. So like could be totally wrong. But
Western Europeans did. There's a lot of evidence that other cultures around the world figured that out.
This Galileo. Whatever. Totally fair. I just think at this point there should have been more, maybe. And it's also weird to me, at least in the scope of the Warrens, that they kept saying they had all this hard evidence and then never produced it.
Any.
One of their cases was called like the Wolf Man, and I don't remember if it was Ed or Lorraine who said that they had a video of this man turning into a werewolf and then just never produced it. And it's like, if you have that, you're producing it, because that's going to skyrocket you into like different level. That's like global fame at that point. And they didn't. And that's another reason people are skeptical of them.
Right.
So there is some like obviously hearsay evidence of people who have talked to Ed specifically, is the main one, who would say things like, hey, if you work with us, we can make a lot of money from this, which is like, okay,
I mean, it's just like feels blatantly like a business venture,
at least for him.
It makes you like anything that you say then like very unreliable.
Yes, yeah. So they formed the New England Psychic Research Society, right?
Okay, this is the same one. Okay, cool.
There's a counterpart to them. Do you want to guess what it's called?
So theirs is called the New England Psychic Research Society.
Yeah, and they're researching like paranormal activity. So what's their counterpart?
Okay, stay with me.
Yeah.
The New England Psychic Research Society.
We're really into the double names. Yeah.
I'm a petty king.
No, I get it. It is called, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. The New England Skeptical Society.
Good. Probably better name.
Which like shortens to NES.
NES, yeah.
Which is incredible. It's founded by Stephen Novella, Bob Novella, and Perry DeAngelis. It's originally a couple of different groups. The one that the Novellas and Perry founded was called the Connecticut Skeptical Society, founded in 96. And then they kind of joined with the Skeptical Inquirers of New England and the New Hampshire Skeptical Resource. And they all formed NES in 97.
I love that.
I love that.
Harry Houdini would love it too.
Harry Houdini would be so thrilled about that. And their biggest case, if you look at their Wikipedia page, their biggest investigation to this day is the Warrens.
The Warrens, yeah.
Incredible. And so obviously they have a lot of like resources of being like they're absolute frauds, you know. And I think there's no black and white here. I think there's some gray of like, even if the paranormal doesn't exist, people experienced things, you know? So
sure, but then a lot of times those people either A, paid money, or B, lost licensing rights over their money or over their name or their story, and someone else made money off of them.
We're going to get into that.
Okay.
That's the next big thing. So they wrote a lot of books. So by the time any of the movies came out, Ed had passed. And it was just Lorraine. So the biggest thing from their lifetime career is the books.
Plus a handful of creepy old dolls.
Yes, for sure. And creating like a museum. One of the authors, they always like co-authored these books. So one of the authors, Ray Garton, who I had previously mentioned, on writing In a Dark Place, he said, quote, "As I gathered all the necessary information for the book, I found that the accounts of the individual Snedekers, who were the victims of this case, didn't quite mesh. They just couldn't keep their story straight. I went to Ed with this problem. Oh, they're crazy, he said. Everybody who comes to us is crazy. Otherwise, why would they come to us?
Oof, okay.
You've got some of the story. Just use what works and make the rest up. And make it scary. You write scary books, right? That's why we hired you." He was like a horror novel writer.
Okay.
"So just make up the rest and make it scary." Again, another reason why I don't trust Ed at all.
When he's literally like fictionalized this, sensationalized this,
exactly,
serialized
but again, that's hearsay because I think this didn't come out until Ed passed.
Okay.
So take it with a grain of salt, but still, that's not a good look.
Sure.
At all. The same author, Ray Garton, said that the Warrens only really started uncovering demons consistently in their investigations after the success of the movie The Exorcist.
Well, what was the author, Ray Gartner's, what was his relationship with the Warrens?
He was just a co-author for In a Dark Place.
So then my question is like, that person has no incentive to like burn the bridge or like water down their work unless he feels compelled to share the truth, which is that like this person has actively asked me to like.
Or I would never know his counterpoint, play devil's advocate for the devil's advocate.
Please.
I would never know his name unless he said that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Tarnish someone's name to help boost up
your
your
own.
own. Yeah.
Yeah. The other argument against the Warrens is that they're grifters, which like.
Sorry, was I not supposed to be that quick on it?
I think there again, there's a middle ground. Like I think they started out with pure intentions that they just wanted to see haunted houses, and then in the right place at the right time. People will argue that they were taking advantage of people in tough situations, which you can then argue, well, they didn't charge for it. But then on the flip side of that, you can argue, well, they did end up having a story probably about it and making a bunch of money off of that. And then people would say that they would make money from like doing these lectures and all of this. My favorite argument, the one that I disagree with the most, is that they're like, and they charge people to come into their occult museum. It's like
the one thing I agree with. Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
Fund your local institutions. Yes.
Yeah. They're like, but like, and then they tell you that like you can't like make fun of Annabelle the doll. Why are you charging people if they're gonna like if it's dangerous for them? I was like, yeah, they're gonna charge you for that, bitch. So anyway, And then there's just the general argument that the movies show the Warrens being a lot more involved in the investigations. And in some cases, they weren't as involved as depicted.
Sure. Touched the case, talked about it.
Exactly.
Wrapped up what they needed to.
Yes.
Called up the church, got rejected, and then headed out.
Yeah. And I think probably a lot of the time it wasn't that. I think they genuinely wanted to help a lot of people, at least at first. I don't remember which case it was. But there was one case, I don't remember which Conjuring movie, but the other paranormal investigators who were called then claimed that the Warrens were actually only there for one day and they weren't actually ever really invited to investigate. And then the movie shows them being like the main thing, which, okay. I don't, like, sure, I guess. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the legal battles. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the legal battles.
Okay.
The Perrin family, who is one of the poltergeist-ish, one of the really haunted houses that they did.
Okay.
That, to my knowledge, of the famous cases the Warrens worked on, is the one that kind of everyone is like, yeah, something was fucking up with that house. Like that was weird. That was weird as shit.
Okay.
In 2007, the older brother of the Devil Made Me Do It case, who I mentioned, who was already like, this is all bullshit, Carl, he said, it was fabricated. They made me do it. There was never any possession. He tries to sue. I don't know if he tries to sue the Warrens or if he tries to sue the Warner Brothers / New Line, who are the production company of that movie. Regardless, Zach Bagans, who is the paranormal investigator for Ghost Adventures, the one that Em and Christine make fun of all the time for being way too serious, he now owns the chair that the little boy was exorcised in his occult museum. And after a while, they had to actually block off the chair to stop people from sitting in it because so many people sat in it and then had to get corrective back surgery very close after sitting in this chair.
What?
Right? Anyway, 2013.
Show me the medical records.
It's just wild to me. Okay, 2013, a lawsuit comes out after the first Conjuring movie, and it comes out, the lawsuit is against Warner Brothers / New Line. This lawsuit does not originally include the Warrens. By this point, I think I mentioned this way later, Ed has passed, he passed in 2006, I believe, and Lorraine would live to 2019. Tony DeRosa Grund was a friend of the Warrens. The Warrens sold him the rights to their stories. And so he's now managing the creative control of those stories. Tony gives 25 of the case files to these stories to Warner Brothers and say, these are the cases of the Warrens that I believe would make good movies. And in these cases are what the movies became of. He says that, and then he says, in return, I want producer credits, and I want a percentage of the profits.
Okay.
And to get around that, the Warner Brothers, instead of using the case files, use the books written about the cases.
Oh, so funny. They're like, we can actually just get the source material from somewhere else.
But those books, as we've kind of discussed, have already been they're not 100% true because the Warrens were like, hey.
Right.
Do what you're going to do.
Right.
The primary book being a book called The Demonologist by a man called Gerald Brittle. And so really what they're doing when they're making these movies, why I say don't trust the movies if you're looking for the real story. Exactly. Is they're making a story of a story. And then also what I found out when listening to Em and Christine talk about this, they had worked in entertainment in Hollywood, right? And Christine was saying that this is why producers won't open up people who won't open up scripts that people just send into production studios. They fully will not unseal them.
Okay.
Even if it's someone that's just I'm a great screenwriter, look at my thing.
Right.
Because then if they completely innocently, unintentionally make a movie way later down the line that incorporates plot lines, they can get sued for it. Right. And so that's literally what's happening right now. And so, however, Gerald Brittle figures this out when this lawsuit comes out, and he's like, hey, you didn't buy rights from me either.
Right.
And so the Warner Brothers...
Oh, so they have to pay someone for the information.
Literally no one.
Good for Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Listen, if we're going to have movies about grifters, I want the movies to be made by grifters, okay?
Grifters.
Eventually it gets all the way back up to President Trump. President Grifter.
President. Call him that. He needs his own nickname, President Grifter.
Talk about a devil. Go ahead.
So the Warner Brothers didn't get rights to that book either, it seems like. And so Gerald Brittle sues Warner Brothers then for $900 million.
Start high. You can only go down.
No, truly. And the Warner Brothers essentially say, well, we're doing a story based off of something that you wrote, for sure.
Right.
But that story is not actually your story. Like, you did that off of someone else's story. So technically, I want to know the fucking, like, legal intern that was like, wait a fucking
Where are they
second.
trying to steer the ship is where I want to know.
Like, literally in this, like, very narrow gap between icebergs. So Gerald story says they don't owe him rights because it's not actually your story. And then Gerald said, well, actually, my story has my creative input in it because it's not 100% true. And that's when he comes out. This is a second author now that's come out saying it's not 100% true because allegedly Gerald, at the time of writing the book, thought the book was correct. And then later the Warrens told him that a lot of what they had told Gerald was fabricated.
So they're like, we're just kind of loosely inspired by your own fiction.
Which is loosely inspired by
your own fiction, which you don't fully own. And even if you did, isn't fully yours because it's the person you got it from, it wasn't theirs.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit like the person who got injured at Disneyland and tried to sue Disney, and Disney was like, you can't sue us because you had at Disney Plus and you agreed in the terms and conditions to settle outside of court. And then a judge was like, you can't do that. That's not
that's such bullshit.
Like, it's like, hey, I get why you tried that, but that's not how this is gonna go down.
Hey.
No.
Good try. Good try. But no. Trigger warning.
For going, what?
I'm literally about to tell you.
Oh, okay. I kind of thought
For what?
I don't know. The vibes just felt like you said trigger warning and we're then just about to start what it is that you were going to say. And I was like, not only is that not sufficient for them, I also want to know what I need to be braced for. So for what?
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
I don't know why. It just kind of felt like we were jumping into it. Sorry. There's a trigger warning.
Thank you. For child sexual abuse and domestic violence. Very quickly. Okay. Whatever. This woman is named Judith Penney. She was taken in by the Warrens when she's 18.
Okay.
Which was around...
When she's 18?
It's around 1963. Lorraine's attorney says that Judith had faced a childhood of neglect, which is why the Warrens took her in. So she's living with them following becoming an adult, allegedly. It actually worked out well for the Warrens because the Warrens traveled around a lot. And so Judith would then stay home and watch the house and answer the phones because I'll mention this later, but they essentially had like a haunted hotline where people could call her or call the Warrens and they would like respond accordingly. And so she would respond to the phone calls sometimes. Judith also, this is where the trigger warning starts, also allegedly had a this is not where the trigger warning starts. I'm so sorry. Judith had a long-term boyfriend around this time. And the couple would spend like holidays with the Warrens, etc. She would eventually marry this boyfriend. I think now she's in her 70s or 80s. In 2017, Judith Penney claimed that she had a 40-year sexual relationship with Ed, beginning when she was, again, brace yourself, 15, with Lorraine's knowledge.
Okay.
Again, this is all alleged because Judith has still never, at least to my knowledge, to this day, intentionally made this public. This statement that she made was made for a 2014 lawsuit in relation to this whole Conjuring universe legal battle. This was not something that she, I believe at the time, intended to become public, but it did become public once the case started progressing. The Hollywood Reporter ended up doing an expose, and then they got documents from the case, and that's how this became public.
Okay.
This has never been litigated, which is why I'm going to use alleged in all of these statements. I, in general, trust survivors And this feels like it adds up with Ed's personality, to be totally honest. And like just the whole, everything I know about the Warrens. But again, it's alleged. When they met, Ed would have been in his mid-30s and working as a bus driver in Connecticut. This was before their career really took off. And Judith was a high schooler who was taking his bus that he would drive. And that's how they met. Allegedly, later on, I believe after she was living with them, not sure, she got pregnant. And Lorraine convinced her to get an abortion in order to avoid public scrutiny. Again, all alleged. Ed, by this point, had passed. And by the time this became public, Lorraine was, I believe, 90.
Okay.
And so was not really able to make public comment. So I don't think Judith has ever spoken publicly about this. So this is all I don't want to say hearsay because that makes it sound like I don't believe it, but it is like a source of a source.
Sure.
Again. Judith, in these statements, also claimed that she witnessed Ed abuse Lorraine, one time backhanding her so hard that she passed out. The verbiage surrounding all of this is kind of confusing because it seems like Ed was the only one abusing Lorraine, but then Judith would say things like, I thought they were going to kill each other. Not, I thought he was going to kill her.
Okay.
Which just makes the situation a little bit more convoluted in terms of like where the violence was. But like I mentioned, by 2017, when this becomes public, Ed had already passed and Lorraine was 90. And so her lawyer was like, she's not making any public comments about this. So their only daughter's name is Judy.
So Judy and Judith.
Yes.
And Judy Warren said this. Okay.
Her name now is Judy Spera. She's married. Judy and Tony Spera both say they never witnessed any of this alleged domestic violence between at least the Warrens.
Okay.
However, one source that I read did say that Judy didn't actually really live with the Warrens, that she lived with Lorraine's mom. And so that makes the situation even weirder because it's like, okay, well, you might not have witnessed it.
You brought in this woman that's not your biological child, and your biological child went
is living
to go
with
live
someone
somewhere
else. And I don't really trust what your daughter has to say because she wasn't living with you. But again, I don't know if that's
Unless
true.
It's like, well, the mom and dad are on the road all the time, and living with my grandma is just more stable, and you're younger, so you're going to live with them, and like that's better just for like the nature of the family work. And Judith, who is like older and like kind of can take care of herself, can like like stay at our place for cheap or whatever. But like again, there are scenarios where you can set up where it like makes sense, like the decisions that get there, but it is unusual.
It's just we're hearing this from like people who have read accounts from those original people because no one has, it seems, at least to my knowledge, has spoken publicly about this.
Right.
That was actually involved, aside from the daughter, who I don't necessarily trust because from what I understand, she wasn't directly involved.
Okay.
So, yeah, something that I think does back up Judith's claim is that Lorraine, who was the only one alive when the production of the Conjuring movies was happening, had some unusual restrictions surrounding the portrayal of her and her husband in the movies. It said, quote, "The films couldn't show her or her husband engaging in crimes, including sex with minors, child pornography, prostitution, or sexual assault. Neither the husband nor wife could be depicted as participating in an extramarital sexual relationship." And then I saw, so a talent attorney, then Jill Smith, who was interviewed for this Hollywood Reporter expose, said, quote, "I have done deals which prevented depictions of certain specific types of odious behavior which are not relevant to the underlying story and in which typically the person is not known to have participated." So just saying she's like, I've seen.
It's not unusual for them to name, you're not going to take our artistic license
but
there.
It just feels like too
in the
specific.
light of, Yeah,
especially in the light of, Judith's statement. And then I believe there was another source saying that she had also stipulated they couldn't depict domestic violence between the couple. Okay. Which then, again, the Conjuring movies depict the Warrens as like a super loving couple.
Right.
Which then again is like, okay, that's just disingenuous. But then again, you're making a movie off of a book, off of a story.
That has probably been fabricated in the name of making money in the first place.
Yeah. Which is where this all gets like wildly complex.
Right.
Especially because none of the original players are actually like involved.
Really in play anymore.
Yes.
Right. And the movie's not about them, it's about what they did, but the interesting parts of the movie isn't them.
But then you're also marketing it as based on a true story.
Right. And the whole true story aspect is these individuals, like connecting them to it, and like their time with this case is what makes it based on a true story.
Yeah. Wild. Yeah. And so
it's just enough layers to pull off basically whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately for Judith, she wasn't just really a victim of the Warrens. I mean, arguably, definitely, she was most victimized by the Warrens, but she was also a victim of the rampant misogyny around the time. Someone reported that, so someone around the Warrens reported that an unrelated teenager was living with them, and that felt gross. And instead of questioning, like, I don't know, Ed or Lorraine, Judith was arrested and detained.
For what?
For having an affair.
What?
Yeah. For like being part of an affair.
Like in the 60s?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so she was arrested and detained while police tried to get her to sign a statement admitting to the affair. Again, not sure why.
Right.
And when she refused, she was released, but then had to report to the delinquent youth office on court orders. And so Ed would like pick her up from school and then drive her to these meetings.
What?
Which is just like...
That whole thing is weird.
Wild to me. Yeah, so Judith's account is just really heartbreaking. The Warrens absolutely groomed her, like on top of probably, allegedly, like legally for reasons I'm saying allegedly, but abusing her. But if you want to, I'm not going to go more into this case, but if you would like to read the Hollywood Reporter article, it's linked in my sources. It's the 2017 Hollywood Reporter article. I believe there's one from like 2013. It's the 2017 one. Judith never publicly told her story. The only reason it came out is due to the other lawsuits surrounding The Conjuring, which again is just like so sad because like I believe in a victim's ability to want to tell their story and their own agency. And I mean, I don't know if the Hollywood Reporter asked her if they could talk about this, but like it just feels like she's getting more taken away from her. You know?
In an episode where, like, who controls the narrative is a big question.
Yeah.
One of the answers is definitely not Judith.
It's not Judith. Yeah. Absolutely. But it does come into play in the context of The Conjuring because many agree that the lovey couple portrayed in the movies is a far cry from the actual relationship. One review of The Conjuring 2 said, quote, amid the chills and thrills, the childhood anxieties and vulnerabilities, director James Wan has made a celebration of the demonologist duo's marriage, which is like, okay.
And probably not true. And also not really the point of the movie.
Literally not. I haven't seen The Conjuring because I'm a scaredy cat. If it was a rom-com, you bet your ass I would have seen it. Anyway, so all of this calls into question the legality of production companies saying, quote, based on a true story versus inspired by a true story. And at the end of each film in the Conjuring universe, it says, quote, dialogue and certain events and characters contained in the film were created for the purposes of dramatization. Just like
at the end, after all the credits.
Yeah, probably, honestly. Attorney Lincoln Bandlow, who I don't think was involved in the case, but specializes in legal clearance for production, says, quote, it's a less enjoyable film if the ghost hunters are a bunch of assholes no one likes. You have to make your protagonist likable. Yeah. In the scope of telling a story, totally get it.
Right.
In the scope of like the ethical dilemma of telling the story.
Right. Of telling a, quote, true based on a true story.
You can't market it as based on a true story if you're going to absolutely lie, knowingly lie.
I think we've started to see some movies come out that are like, quote, inspired by real events as opposed to based off of real events.
Yeah. And that's how you know, like, their legal team was like,
you can't.
You literally can't say that. Attorney Lincoln Bandlow also said, he also makes the point that this is a story about the paranormal, and so he argues that audiences already anticipate fictionalization as opposed to like a historical drama or something. Like if Grant goes into a paranormal movie, he's not going to believe a goddamn thing. He's going to be terrified, but no, he's not going to believe a damn thing.
I mean, that's probably a fair description.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just get so sucked into a story, but I walk out and I go, oh, that wasn't real.
Yeah, exactly. He does go on to say that if he were the one representing the studio, he would have cautioned them against misleading fans. But he also doubts that a false foundation would spark any viable legal claim. I would say that like it does change your perception of things if you know that it's based on a true story, right? It makes things more real.
And in a movie where you're trying to sell something that you can't believe, one of the core tenets needs to be, I can't believe, yet it still happens, so I am being called to believe. And without that second part of the equation, then you just wrote fan fiction and then put it in the air.
Exactly. There's another attorney, Lisa Califf, who represents independent producers. She agrees that this is more of a public relations issue than an actual legal issue,
right,
in terms of the production. And so I understand the legality of ownership rights to stories. I mean, we talked about Wicked and how those ownership rights were complex in certain aspects. But none of the original players seem to be involved in the lawsuit. Judith isn't directly involved, at least at the time of the 2017 article. And again, I think she's in her 70s or 80s now. Okay. So I still don't think she's involved. At least I didn't see any headlines saying she was. Lorraine wasn't involved, and the subjects of the various movies didn't really seem to be involved either. I think there was like some lawsuits where people were like, hey, I'm in that movie. And, you know, but it's like it's not the same as the Warrens or Judith, you know? I also don't think, like legally, I don't think Judith ever really could have profited from the Conjuring movies. Because she wasn't ever represented in any of those stories. I think she makes like a cameo in The Demonologist as a book because, again, she like answered the phone for a case. But again, that's it. And
it's like the movie needs to be making money off of your like image or likeness. The fact that your story is proof that it's not telling the whole truth is why it's based off of real events, but not actually. Yeah,
exactly. So legacy, again, 10,000 cases they investigated. They co-authored 10 books. The Conjuring is the second biggest horror movie franchise of all time, even though, so franchise is different from single movie, right? So in terms of franchises, they're the biggest of all time.
Okay.
Second only to Alien.
Okay.
So the Conjuring movie franchise has grossed worldwide $2.36 billion.
Oof.
The Alien has worldwide has grossed $1.65 billion. In terms of single movies, none of the Conjuring movies show up until 5, until 5th place. So the highest grossing horror movies, do you want to guess?
I would have no basis. That's like the genre I know so little about.
It.
Okay.
At $701 million.
The original one, I'm assuming.
No, the newer one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jaws. The original one.
That doesn't shock me.
Yeah.
Okay.
At $484 million.
So hokey, that one actually is enjoyable to watch. Like, you can see like the motor and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
It too.
Okay.
Yeah.
The even newer one.
Yes.
Okay.
$468 million, and then The Exorcist at $429, and then The Nun, which is in the Conjuring universe, at $363, which is then followed by one of the Alien movies, then Hannibal, then A Quiet Place, starring John Krasinski, then The Conjuring, and then Resident Evil.
Would that being the 10th place one?
5, 6, 7, 8.
But
9,
it was the number one seeded one. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. The New England Society for Psychic Research is still around. It's, I think, run a lot in part by their daughter and son-in-law who took up the helm after they passed.
Kept the family business going.
In 2006, Ed passed after a long battle with illness. I believe, I didn't write the dates down, he had a stroke. And at some point, I want to say they were in Japan. And it was after they were visiting the exact places that Ed had been stationed at.
Okay.
And she took him... he took Lorraine to the place that he was when he received the call that Lorraine was pregnant.
Oh.
With Judy, had given birth to Judy or something like that. And then very shortly after that, he had a stroke and then was never the same.
Oh.
Which, I mean, like, just feels full circle, I guess. After Ed passed, Lorraine refused to go into their occult museum. I think when she died, she wanted all of their spooky ass shit to go to the Vatican.
What?
I don't know if that ever happened, but that's so funny.
Put it in my will too. Anything spooky, mail it to the Vatican City.
I'll deliver it, babes. In 2019, Lorraine passed at the age of 92 in Monroe, Connecticut. Sorry, one of the other things that I forgot to mention at the beginning, one of the like telltale signs of like a haunted place, especially on like film, is that you'll see like
the orbs.
Orbs.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Dust. Gotcha.
Yes. But the night that Lorraine was put into the coffin at the funeral home, the undertaker showed Judy and her husband, whose name was also Tony, a different Tony, but showed them the security footage, and there is a bunch of orbs of light shown that were just like kind of surrounding the coffin that Lorraine was in, which I thought was sweet. Judy obviously is on the side of her parents not being grifters and genuinely wanting to do well for people.
Right.
Especially
loving marriage.
Yes.
All that
especially
stuff.
Lorraine. Judy says that Lorraine refused to change their address number even after Ed died, just in case someone needed to find them.
Oh.
Because their address was public and she wanted to be findable for people who were uncomfortable about something. Judy also said that Lorraine would stay up like all hours of the night talking to people who were like deeply uncomfortable with like a haunting or what they thought was a haunting in their house, which I thought was sweet. She never left people hanging. She had what some people would call a haunted hotline. And then she...
Kind of a complicated lady.
Yes. And then Judy said she had a great childhood. A lot of it was like hearing spooky stories and walking around like cemeteries and all this kind of stuff.
And she grew up in a world where anything could happen.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Quote from Lorraine, and then the last section will be the science of the paranormal, which I find fascinating. Okay. Here's a quote from Lorraine. Quote, "Where a haunting phenomena has occurred, we have never met a true atheist in a haunted home." It's like Grant on a plane that's like getting turbulence.
Say more about that example.
You have said in our podcast that like you're like, yeah, absolutely. If someone's praying, I'm on board.
That's what you mean. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, I mean, part of me is like, well, which one's the cart? Which one's the horse? Like, have you never met an atheist in a haunted house, or is that a prerequisite to believe you were in a haunted house? You know?
True.
Just a thought.
She always comes in after the horse has long left.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Talk to me about the science of...
The science.
Yes.
Okay, before...
Which I think several societies and our friend Harry Houdini would disagree with the science, but tell me more
we're
about the science.
We're going to talk about science that I think you'll agree with. It's not science that's like, yes, paranormal is true. It's like, why do we experience paranormal stuff? Okay, before I talk about that, the sources for everything I've talked about up until now have been Comenian, Sci-Fi, Vox, Hollywood Reporter, Entertainment Weekly, and That's Why We Drink, the New York Times, American Hauntings Podcast, Ghost Adventures, and then 2 documentaries, one on HBO called The Devil's Road, and then another on Netflix called The Devil on Trial, and then a bunch of other like stuff to fill in the blanks. And then the sources for this that we're going to talk about, the non-scientific journal sources that we'll talk about are a 2023 article from the University of South Carolina, 2023 article from the BBC, and a 2022 article from Live Science. And then the ones that are scientific journals are a 2008 article from the Journal of Neuropsychiatry and Clinical Neuroscience, a 2008 one from Cortex, a journal devoted to the study of nervous system and behavior, 2 from 2017 and 2013 that are from Paraanthropology, Journal of Anthropological Approaches to the Paranormal, 2022 Public Library of Science Journal. Dr. Shane Rogers, an environmental engineering professor, investigates the link between haunted houses and the presence of mold.
Okay, I'm interested.
Yeah, I knew you would be. So there's 2 kinds of mold specifically. Aspergillus mold, which is found in damp buildings, can cause shortness of breath and optic nerve inflammation, which can make it seem like there's a dark like shape on the side of your vision or floating across your vision. And then black mold has been found in lab tests to create a sense of fear. And again, hauntings are all about vibes.
Right.
So.
And they're usually in older homes.
Yeah. Yep. In Shane's research, his team collected data on mold in 27 houses, 13 of which were considered haunted. So like the higher the mold concentration, generally what he found is there's a higher chance of people considering that house to be haunted.
Okay.
So what they found is a statistically significant link between the presence of mold and reported hauntings. Dr. Chris French, who is the head of animalistic, that's like anomaly, animal, not animal, right. Animalistic psychology research unit at London Goldsmiths University said, quote, hallucinations are much more common than is generally realized. Anybody can hallucinate under conditions like extreme sleep deprivation, high stress, or high temperature. He also said context is key. Quote, if you're shown around an old building and somebody says it's haunted, you'll notice every little creak and change in temperature in a way you wouldn't have done otherwise. And before I continue, I want to reiterate mouse on an airplane. Like, I'm going to link all of these journals that I'm reading in my show notes under like the section that's like science of paranormal, right? And so you can read all of these, and some of the journals that I am going to read will talk more about like the validity of paranormal experiences and why we should consider looking at them more. But there is no real significant scientific research done to back up paranormal experiences. Again, not to say that they don't exist, because sure.
But they exist outside the scope of our current science.
They exist outside of the scope of our current science, but again, I think people's experiences are valid, and that's why I think the Lutzes probably passed that polygraph test, is that like regardless of if it was mold or sleep deprivation or whatever else that we're going to talk about, what they experienced was real. And I mean, maybe the presence of ghosts increases the chance of mold, you know? So what I'm just reading is science. I'm sorry. Okay. I did find another study that was done in the UK and published in 2017 that showed of respondents, 42% reported having some kind of paranormal experience, just to show how much of our society in general has paranormal experiences or paranormal beliefs. They did find a positive correlation between a belief in the paranormal and having experiences. Meaning if you don't believe in the paranormal, like Grant, the chances of you having a paranormal experience are significantly decreased, because you're going to look for non-paranormal explanations for things that people who believe in the paranormal would just say, that's a fucking ghost,
right.
You know? So there is a statistical significance of those who believe in the paranormal and those who believe in other, quote, anomalous beliefs like urban legend and conspiracy theories, because you're looking for reasons to understand the world around you. And then you're also more likely to have something called apophenia, which is finding patterns where there aren't any. And so they like would show people at like, what was it, like psychic conventions or something, like this series of patterns versus just like random people on the street. And the people who were known to have paranormal beliefs or belief in like this higher power or whatever were more likely to find more patterns where there statistically weren't any in these like given graphics, essentially. Okay. So another study pointed out how even if you don't believe in the paranormal, science has like this tendency to kind of poo-poo on scientists who are studying it, because they're like, that's not real.
That's not a real science.
And so this study pointed out how we should continue to study paranormal and actually put an emphasis on it, because this is a perfect opportunity for science to understand the cognitive impact of belief systems and like how our brain wires to create belief systems and support belief systems and create these cognitive processes. And because, like it or not, there is an entire community of people who believe in the paranormal, and it's a huge industry. And these beliefs, as of right now, are not backed up by any significant scientific findings, meaning the people that believe this just fucking believe this, you know? And so it's like important to understand that in terms of like religion, in terms of conspiracy theories, in terms of like the formation of like societal groups and communities. And it can be like a really big scientific finding. In a particular study I'm referencing, they define a term called transliminality as, quote, a very broad measure of the susceptibility to experiences such as hypersthesia, synesthesia, and manic and mystical forms of experience, but also comprising traits of fantasy proneness and openness towards the interpretation of one's dreams. So like the more holistic you can be, the more you might be open to new beliefs.
Okay.
There's a noted difference between those who have a high transliminality score versus a low transliminality score. So a high transliminality score is people who are like definitely believe in the paranormal.
Right.
And low transliminality are people that are like
no
Grant.
Way. Right.
Those with high scores had a higher likelihood of structural abnormalities in specifically the left posterior brain regions, which is also seen in schizophrenia patients.
Oh.
However, people with higher transliminality are also statistically more likely to be the most empathetic.
Oh.
Right?
I mean, I thought I'm an empathetic person, but I don't think I have a very high score in this department.
Because you're just more likely to, I mean, like
open
paranormal is just like one side of it, right? It can be like religion, it can be conspiracy theories, it can be whatever. And it's also related to creative problem solving. So the higher transliminality score, the more likely you are to have like kind of an aha moment when you're doing creative problem solving type things. They also noted that those with paranormal beliefs or experiences have a significant intersection with those who need to attribute meaning to everyday experiences. Dear listener, you remember all the times that Grant and I have like disagreed on things where Grant has been like, actually, I don't need to know that.
Right.
And that's exhibit A, B, and C. So it's also like we talked about with QAnon and stuff. It's like the people that need to have a reason for the things that they experience versus mouse on an airplane.
Right. Being like just okay with not knowing.
Yeah, just okay with like, okay.
Not knowing, not really knowing if I believe what I just saw.
Or just like being okay, being like someone will figure that out maybe. Or like it's not like I don't.
Not on my to-do list.
Yeah, not exactly. It was like me researching these paranormal stories after a while. I was like, I don't like, yeah, he had a scratch on his back. That's
right.
There's also a distinction between people who experience surprise when their expectations have been, as a study calls, violated. So if like you're shown pictures of landscapes over and over and over again, and they're monitoring your brainwaves, and then randomly they show you like almost like jump scare a picture of something else.
Okay.
People who are less aware of the presence of a violation are more likely to be believers in the paranormal.
Okay.
Which is just like...
But I thought they recognized patterns more.
They recognize patterns, but they're also creating them.
Okay.
I guess. Like, there's more cognitive dissonance going on.
Okay.
I think with them is what it is. This neuropsychology stuff, like, very, very closely went over my head, like, completely. You know, like, there were some paragraphs where I was like, I didn't understand any of that.
Okay.
And then I went to the conclusion and I was like, I did understand that. You know? And so I highly recommend reading some of these because they are truly fascinating, and the people that write them like clearly care deeply about what they're writing about. The other thing, believers in the paranormal tend to have heightened empathy and pronounced mental state attributions that come at the price of a susceptibility to merge self and others to a project meaningfulness and intentionality where there are, or to project meaningfulness and intentionality where there are none. The first thing I could think of is like when I see a dog, I immediately think about what they're feeling and like what they're doing, and they're excited about their day and what they're doing. And Grant sees a dog and he's like, that's a dog.
I'm allergic and I don't really want to touch it.
Like that's how I interpreted that. One of the other reasons scientists think we might experience these paranormal things is infrasound, which was mentioned in Dyatlov Pass, in terms of infrasound's ability to create hallucinations. It's sound that is lower, I believe, than the human range of normal hearing. And so, two researchers at Coventry University always heard, they're like researching, they've always hear other employees talking about how they have spooky sensations in particular areas of like their building or lab.
Okay.
And they were like, that's fucking ridiculous. What? And then at one point they start experiencing these kinds of weird things. One of them was seeing figures like in the corners of his vision, and they would disappear when he looked at them fully.
So his eyes weren't focused. Gotcha.
No, actually, infrasound can create these kinds of like hallucinations in the corners of your eye. And obviously, like when you look at them, it'll disappear. What they found is the ghost disappeared once a particular fan was turned off, because that fan was creating a sound that was hitting those kinds of infrasound. And I did some research that I didn't write down, but they this could be linked to like evolutionary, I don't know, like progress of humans, because infrasound can also be related to like natural disasters.
Okay.
And so if you're more prone to infrasound and like you get those spooky sensations and your brain is like, bad vibes, gotta get out, like you are more prone to like survive,
right.
You know? And those infrasounds can happen like before earthquakes, tsunamis, like that kind of thing. And so they did test this on a group of people on a ghost tour on some underground passageways in Edinburgh.
Okay, it feels deeply unethical, but that's fine.
Yeah. But like this is a great control because the people that are going in are already primed to expect a spooky sensation, you know? And so they were like, they would do this and they would blast infrasound at like only a certain, like half the groups or
right.
whatever. And then afterwards ask them about their experiences. And there was no difference in actual paranormal experiences, but 20% of the groups that were blasted with infrasound, they notably felt more like uncomfortable and like scared and would experience more like hot spots, not cold spots, but hot spots. And then versus the 5% of other groups, which is like wild to me.
Yeah.
And then there's another thing for electromagnetic energy that I didn't get super into. One of the doctors who I had mentioned earlier, Dr. French, said that there is a region of the brain that surgeons can stimulate. It's where the temporal and parietal lobe meet. It's called I'm not even going to try and say that. It's a junction. And this can affect the patients having an out-of-body experience by them like messing with this part of the brain, which is crazy. All of this being said, though, they have all of these hypotheses for why we might experience paranormal experiences or have these beliefs. Scientists are unable to reliably and consistently recreate paranormal experiences in controlled environments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. I assumed that was a given during this entire episode.
Yeah, but I think it's so cool that like there's like certain things that like people associate with paranormal experiences and beliefs that they're like, oh, this could be caused by this thing and maybe this is like evolutionarily, but like we still can't figure out why people see ghosts or if not or whatever. There is another part of this that I'm not going to read all of this, but in ghost hunting, I'm assuming you know nothing. Correct?
No, yeah,
okay, great.
No idea.
There are these certain tools people use now in ghost hunting, one of which being EVPs. They're called electronic voice phenomena. And there's these recorders essentially that pick up on, I think it's like certain, I don't fucking know. Basically, it takes what you're recording. It's like these mics, but it picks up on a certain frequency that we can't hear. And then when you play it back, it like changes the frequency into a range that you can hear. And so you're able to like translate the energy. And it works on the assumption that spirits or paranormal beings can manipulate frequencies in the world around them, and so then can communicate through these frequencies that we can't hear normally. And so by using these recorders and then playing it back, you can hear the things that they're saying. And so this one study that I did was looking at two groups, what they called a primed group and an unprimed group. And they gave each group like 4 different kinds of human speech. There was like regular human speech, which is their control. And then just like white noise, so no human speech. And then there was like basically a recording of like a crowded room. And then another of an EVP. Have you ever heard an EVP? Essentially, they would play these 4 different versions of human speech and ask the participants if they recognized human speech in them. So again, there's just regular human speech, white noise with no human speech, and then like a crowded room where people are talking, but like it's kind of hard to make out, and then EVPs. And the primed group, they were told, hey, we're testing if you can hear ghost voices in this. And then the other one, they were just like, we're looking to hear if you can hear voices. And it just in general in this sound. And the primed group had a much higher rate of being able to detect voices in the EVPs versus the like degraded human speech or the like noisy room than the other group, the unprimed group, which don't look at the screen and see if you can hear what the EVP is saying.
Who do you work for?
As I review the recording, we hear a Class A EVP that
So
is
funny.
absolutely
Class
incredible.
A.
Wait.
Will you talk to me?
Bicycle? It's not a bicycle.
They're in like something, I think a place that makes bicycles?
Bicycle!
Bicycle.
Oh my god!
Let's play this day. Bicycle. Are you kidding me?
I can't take Zach Bacon seriously at all.
This deep into the episode, have nothing nice to say, so I'm choosing to say nothing at all.
I think you can say anything mean you want to about this
Are
group.
you shitting my dick? And that's proof of what? Also, they're like, there's a glowing green orb, and there's like flashlights everywhere. They're like, did you see it? And it's like, no one was saying bicycle. No one. You have a radio frequency that can pick up at a different level, and it's some guy off in the distance clearly yelling, bicycle. No, none of this is real.
Just like I don't.
It's a Class A EVP? What does that even mean? It's a pseudoscience. You can't have classifications.
I want to be so for real. I have listened to EVPs from even like Em and Christine will like play EVPs, and sometimes they're like, oh my God, they gave me chills. And like they're pretty good about being like, okay, like they're pretty good about laying out all the facts when they talk about the paranormal too, and not just like they're definitely more believers than I am. But I have never once listened to an EVP without reading like the subtitles or being told what it says and being like, hell yeah, that's what that said.
Right.
You know, it's just like, okay.
Right.
So what I said earlier about the primed versus unprimed groups being able to recognize the voices in the EVPs at a higher rate than the unprimed group, I was like, great, that makes total sense. And then they showed me this graph, and I was like, this actually makes...
What is this?
Literally, so this is EVPs. So the dark is the primed group, so the group that was told they're listening for ghost voices.
Okay.
And then this one is the unprimed group, so the group that was just like, listen for voices. And so this is human speech, non-human speech, noisy room. And it's just like...
They're within the margin of error.
Yeah, your margin of error is each other. So like I don't know if you can actually make any conclusions based off of being primed or not, which then makes the opposite argument of like whatever. Anyway, but they did like an analysis of like how accurate their translation of the EVPs were, and they're EVPs from Ghost Adventures, so it's from that show that I just showed you.
Okay.
And they're like the rate at which the subjects were able to come up with the same conclusion that Ghost Adventures came up with was like literally 1%. Like it was so low.
They're following the tradition of the Warrens, which is just making television. They're making a product.
I mean, yeah, I can get behind that. But then only like 10% of them were even able to like come up with similar answers.
Sure.
And so it's just like, again, mouse on a plane. I just think
what goes bump in the night?
It is everything that goes bump in the night, and don't move into a murder house is what I've learned. Okay, that's my story.
The episode title is Advocate for Devil Advocates. No, Maya's not convinced.
Advocate for devil advocates. I mean, I like that, but I think I don't.
Too niche, doesn't summarize it well enough. We'll work on it. And as we work on it, thank you for joining us.
Conjuring the Truth.
Yeah. Ooh, that's great. Actually, I love that.
Thank you.
Especially since I don't view it as truth. So I love that even
funny.
more.
Yeah.
Like towards that last part, one, like, yes, definitely a little tired. It's been like a long day. But second, it's also like hard for me to comment on science I don't believe and thus don't really respect without just being like.
All of that science was not about the paranormal.
No, but we kept inching closer and closer. And I was like, okay. You can find us on social media where we are Well I Laughed. If you would like to submit a story for the next theme, which is...
It's yours, babe.
No, but for them.
Oh, Within These Walls.
Within These Walls. You can email us at wellilaughtedpod@gmail.com or submit a story through our website, wellilaughed.com. If you're looking for additional content, you can find us on Patreon, where we are Well I Laughed. And finally, if you're looking for that special gift for that special someone, Pride this year is coming up. You can find us on Patreon.
Or my birthday.
True. If you have a Gemini in your life that signed you up for a podcast 2 years ago, get them the gift that really matters. More of your voice with Well I Laughed on Patreon.
To see a cameo request from you to you.
As long as you promise that I also then get the profits of it.
That's fine.
Good.
You just get the money back.
What's so funny is, much like at school, I have no idea how the user side of things work. A child asked me today for help uploading an assignment, and I go, I don't know, I've never uploaded an assignment. I've uploaded instructions, but
every
I don't
time
think
we
that's
get a question on Patreon that's like, how do I'm like, I
don't know.
No idea.
Well, all that and more next
love
week.
You.
Bye.